Today is an extremely exciting episode with one of the OGs of Indian entrepreneurship.
2013, at some point, Myntra came very close to dying. Till 2013, we made a lot of mistakes or wrong timing, this, that. Finally, in 2012 and 13, things started to fall in place. But 2013 turned out to be a really bad macro year for India. So all funding dried up. And we were like, अब तो सब कुछ ठीक है.
You obviously had built a reputation. You could have started up
Sure.
in anything. Did you feel the pressure?
For cure.fit, the journey from 2016 to early 20, it's been like a honeymoon that goes on forever, right? सब कुछ ठीक चला, गलत क्या होगा? And then one day, universe conspired and said, अभी देख लो. So COVID happens and the business is completely shut down, and our revenue go from literally 100 to 0. Every time when I come here, I feel like ये अपना देश है. जाके सड़क पे नुक्कड़ पे चाय पीना and So I was sold on the India story that India is in the cusp of taking off. What we witnessed in Silicon Valley in the late 90s is going to happen in India in the late 2000s onwards, right? With that conviction, I decided to move back. Some point of the day, you say, it's almost like mini resignation. कि अगर आप बॉम्बे शेविंग कंपनी चलाते हो 8 बजे बोलते हो मैं रिजाइन कर रहा हूँ अगले 12 घंटे के लिए. अब ये मेरी कंपनी नहीं है, मेरे को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. मुझे शांतनु इज बिगर देन बॉम्बे शेविंग कंपनी, मेरी और भी लाइफ है.
Hi everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Barbershop with Shantanu. Today is an extremely exciting episode with one of the OGs of Indian entrepreneurship. Someone who I have met multiple times, who has interviewed me for a job, but has built out iconic businesses twice, sold them, and is now on his journey to build his next thing. And he calls himself a builder, someone who keeps building over and over again. Welcome Mukesh to the Barbershop.
Thanks Shantanu. Very excited to be here. I think very inspired by what you are doing in Barbershop. I think amazing conversation with a lot of very interesting guests, and super thrilled to be here.
So how long are you in Delhi for this trip?
I am going back tomorrow afternoon.
Or how much do you travel generally?
It's a lot. As you probably know, last 2 years I was part of Tata Digital. So I was going to Mumbai almost every week.
Okay.
So I have never traveled more in my life. I think for me, up to 5-6 days a month is comfortable. Beyond that starts to get a little challenging. But right now I think it's probably averaging 10 days a month.
Wow. But are you able to control it?
Yeah, no, I think so. So what happened is 2021, when I got to Tata Digital, I was going to Mumbai every week and my lifestyle went for a toss.
Okay.
I'm not able to work out, eating outside, not sleeping well. And after 2 months of that, I was like, this is, I can't do this. I need to solve this, and this is the most important problem in life. I don't know if you know or not, right? 3 years ago, I wrote my first book, No Limits.
Correct.
It's all about productivity.
Correct.
So I see myself as this, productivity, lifestyle design guy. I'm saying, look, I tell world how to design their life and how to be productive, and here I am. Correct. Like whole travel has made my life.
Correct.
So I'll completely go for a toss.
Correct.
So I actually worked on it very systematically with pen and paper. I designed everything. I sorted my place and cook and commute and all of that. I think within a couple of months, I was able to replicate my Bangalore lifestyle in Mumbai. And after I learned a lot in that process. So I've learned to now, make my travel as seamless as possible.
Correct.
I still, go to bed at the same time. This morning I got up at 5 a.m., worked out at 5:30. So hence, I'll probably insist that we finish this early. But yeah,
wow.
I'm saying I've tried to make, travel more comfortable and palatable now.
But it's amazing how kind of fitness is not just about, for a lot of people, it's about looking good for a vacation or a wedding or whatever. And it's vanity. Yeah. But at the end, it's also about like just living your best life every day.
It boils into ultimately quality of life. Things, over decades.
Was fitness something important for you because of which you started cult.fit, or did you see an opportunity, or how did that happen?
Various factors. I think it was important to me for different reasons at different stages of life. Okay. Growing up, I was very active. I pretty much played all sport. I can actually I do proudly claim that I can play almost any sport. Not very good at anything, but it doesn't really matter. I think I can move. I know my way around, rackets and courts and things like that. So that was my way of being active. Then I ended up, going to US for my first job, and slowly started adopting, the Western lifestyle. I want to tell you one funny incident also. So when I moved to US, since then I've only lived in Haridwar and Kanpur, and suddenly in Chicago, and had no idea about the diet, lifestyle, culture, and the apartment building I was living in. There was McDonald's right below. And there's absolutely nothing vegetarian in the McDonald's store except hash browns. Okay. So I'll go down in the morning, 7 a.m., have 5 hash browns.
Fried potatoes.
Fried potatoes, day after day. But and that lifestyle starts to catch up with you. And after a few years, I started to see a difference, right? And then
you were 22, 23 at that time?
I was 22 when I went to US. But after a couple of years, I inspired by actually one of my roommates, I started my gym journey. I started going to a gym, and then got into the whole bodybuilding culture. From there, long distance running and yoga and CrossFit and you name it. So I think since 99 onwards, similar to Pramad's example, I've been to fitness in one form or other. Maximum break probably would have been just few months somewhere in between, but by and large, no breaks, right? So there was that personal connect. And then obviously 2016, when I was thinking of starting something, I wanted to do something where I can be very, very passionate about, where I can have a personal connect, and looked at multiple things, and somewhere got convinced that health is also a big mega trend, that people will pay a lot of attention to their health. They will look for good quality solutions, and India at that time, didn't have really any good organized solution, right? There was a kind of combination of personal interest as well as kind of professional opportunity, and fortunately I think things have gone quite well for cure.fit as well.
Yeah, but talk about thinking about and I know we're going deep very quickly, but
sure.
Knowing you, I would love to kind of explore that that element. But talk about being a founder who had exited at that time the largest, and continues to be one of the largest exits in our ecosystem in the new consumer internet age. You obviously had built a reputation. You could have started up in anything, right? So did you feel the pressure ki now the first domino was good, the second one has to be bigger?
No, I think there absolutely wasn't any pressure. If at all there was anything, it was probably more self-created, in the sense that partly I think what I realized, entrepreneurial journey, a lot is boils down to ultimately knowing who you are. And again, for me, although I formally started as an entrepreneur in 2007, but I've been dabbling in entrepreneurship since 99. I was 24-year-old, right? I worked for 4 different startups in Silicon Valley, moved back to India in 2007. First 4 years, basically nothing happened. We kept pivoting, trying different things. And finally in 2011, things took off. Exit was a great validation, milestone, financial outcome personally, investor and so on. But by the time, I was very convinced that at heart, I'm an entrepreneur. I like building things. That whole thing of identifying an opportunity, trying to make something happen from nothing, just gives me immense pleasure. So I had no doubt, like long before quitting Flipkart, that whenever I quit, my next thing will be I start something. Even today, I know whenever my cure.fit journey comes to end, I'll start something, and so on, until I have energy. So that way, so that was a little bit of self-created. Probably I was too overcommitted to starting, and what I should have done probably is taken a 3 month or 6 month off. Okay. I was basically started my next company within 1 month of quitting Flipkart. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I thought I'll stay for 3-4 months, but I started get bored, and I mean just you go back to your default mode. My default mode is busy with things, trying to make something happen. So,
but how did you evaluate the market? So of course, health is a mega trend, no doubt about it. And I think like at that time, 2016 is when we started Bombay Shaving Company as well. So I agree with you. I remember those days of people, and at that time I was 27, 28. So that's the age when your body starts rejecting your bad habits. So for me, like going to a gym for the first time, or kind of going to a workout, at that time CrossFit was slowly taking off in India, right? So I get you. I hear you. My father has been a runner for a long time. My mom is a yoga teacher, so घर पे भी वो है. But I saw friends getting involved. But how did you think about कि इस trend को मैं business कैसे बनाऊंगा?
Right. Yeah. So what we did initially, fortunately second time around, is we tried to study the market. इंडिया में क्या हो रहा है, ग्लोबली क्या चल रहा है, and what do consumers think about health. And we started picking a lot of these cues. People were shifting from white bread to brown bread. People start to say कि I just want to have egg white omelette, yellow नहीं चाहिए, right? Or avocado toast were coming to India, right? I mean, growing up, we never even heard of something called avocado, right? All this multi-grain cereals and fortified Maggi. People are trying to make Maggi also healthy, right? So you could see that consumers are starting to pay attention to their health.
Correct.
They are demanding from their products कि यार इसको थोड़ा सा healthy बना दो. So for me, that was a great validation that consumers also are ready. And then in the fitness space also, a lot of these boutique fitness formats were starting to come. So I think we could anecdotally see a lot of signs. Then the core insight that we finally settled into is, किसी से आप पूछो कि आपको आर यू इंटरेस्टेड हेल्दी लाइफस्टाइल, 100% ऑफ पीपल विल से यस. किसी ने आज तक ये नहीं बोला कि यार मेरे को नहीं चाहिए हेल्दी लाइफस्टाइल, मैं चला लूँगा. लाइक बट पीपल स्ट्रगल, right? Because pursuit of healthy lifestyle is very difficult. It requires getting fitness right, food right, sleeping right, meditation right, your health checkups right, you have to be quite disciplined, you have to build habits. It's just too complicated.
Correct.
So our insight was, people want good health. Health is difficult. Can we make it simple? So for me, that insight was very powerful. And we built the whole company around that. We said, like, whatever people need for healthy lifestyle, we'll try to make it as easy, simple and seamless. Therefore, we chose group classes. So group class compared to gym, it's a day and night. If you walk into a gym, you have to see all these machines. You have to learn how to operate, all those machines, how to load weights, right form factor. But in a group class, you show up, other people are doing it, you start, mimicking what they are doing. Trainer tells you what to do. Similar, pattern we try to apply in meditation, health, food, and so on. And some things have gone well, some have not gone well. But the core insight was this: people want good health, but on their own, they are not getting there. Can we do something to make it easy?
Understand. You understood the insight, but how did you convert that into a business? Like, how did you think about?
Yes, I don't talk.
No, I think they should be absolute part of the conversation.
Very soon, yeah, I will have my watch answer. Yeah.
How did you think about converting the insight into a living, growing concern, which was a business, like for capital, people, like, because you come with baggage. When I'm thinking about if I were to start a new company today, like I would come with so much baggage. So how did you think? Because it's very different businesses.
Yeah, I think it was, I'll qualify baggage too. I think second time entrepreneur, you're starting with both some advantages and disadvantages. So for my advantages were, we could raise a lot of money on day one, which we did. We raised $15 million on basically a bad, presentation. Something you put together because we had to show up and present, right? I was too embarrassed to even open up and see their presentation, but the track record was there and people were willing to bet, hopefully right bet.
And so, only two of you at that time?
Only me and Ankit, were there. So we just basically pretty much told investors that we see health is a big opportunity. This is what we're thinking. It was very vague description.
तब क्या था? क्या बोला था आपने उनको?
I think overall mostly ये बोले थे कि health solve करना है. Health is going to be a very big market. And I think we position that we'll create a health subscription. कि आप अगर health subscription लोगे तो आपकी सारी चीज़ें हम manage करेंगे. Personalized program, this, that. So some version of that. And I would say vision wise, we are not far off, but obviously solutioning wise, we were quite far off.
It evolved
from that, right? But anyway, and these were all investors that I worked with in the past. Subrata from Excel, Sudhir from Sirate Ventures, Vani from Kalari. So we had already, all four of us worked together for 10 plus years. So I think there was a mutual comfort to start again. So that started funding. Ankit was a very high caliber, co-founder. He was chief business officer of Flipkart before. We also had the advantage of attracting really good talent. So again, prior Myntra, Flipkart background allow us to do this. So those were advantages. Disadvantage was obviously, there was a lot of expectation कि पहले साल में कुछ हो जाएगा बड़ा, right? And even our own expectations, we felt कि अब तो इतना देख चुके हैं, we should be able to do something very fast, right? But I think other big disadvantage was, which I was aware of and consciously worked on, is I actually didn't want to operate like a second time entrepreneur. And
what does that mean? Operate like
see, once you've done something, you start to feel like, been there, done that, मेरे को पता है कैसे होता है. You start applying a lot of pattern matching and so on. But the time was very different. 2016 was very different. 2007. I can't use the parallels from early days of Myntra or Myntra struggle. Different context, different market, right? So a lot of I wanted to more operate like almost like a first time founder, having that mix of naivety and excitement and the what people call in Zen beginner's mind, right?
Yeah.
I feel net you need some wisdom, but not overdo it. So I think, but that was a potential blind spot, and I think in the retrospect, someone talked about you did make a lot of mistakes despite this awareness, etc. So other advantage was our ability to buy a company. Now, if you start a company today, the first time entrepreneur, you can't look at acquisition first 3 months, but we could.
Yeah.
And in fact, our very first product market fit happened through acquisition. We end up acquiring this gym called Cult, very close to where I used to live. I used to walk by every day and see this mixed martial art gyms. It has just some very macho vibe about this. And I was just very intrigued and curious, and one day ended up walking inside and inquiring what they do, and really liked the founders first and foremost, but second what they were trying to do. And I could see that this could be a really good seed for what we want to do in fitness space. So we ended up acquiring, our product market fit, so to speak, right? That was a big advantage. Yeah.
But cult was single location, multiple
location? It was single location. It was very hardcore mixed martial art gym.
Okay.
There used to be a MMA ring right in the middle of it. And these guys had a professional fighters also from outside. And, it was super hardcore. In fact, this is, I think people find it very hard to believe. But so when I walk in, I inquire कि यहाँ पे कैसे classes होती हैं. I told Rishabh that I want to try, so he enrolled me in the whatever class was.
Rishabh is who? The founder?
Rishabh was the cult founder.
Okay.
And very avid MMA enthusiast. He used to fight himself and all that. So उसने मेरे को trial class में लगा दिया कि चलो आप भी कर लो इसमें. So I went in, and it was a pretty hardcore rugby drills and all that. In one of the drills, so I was paired with one huge guy. He must be over 100 kg. And the drill was, there's a rugby ball, and I have to hold it as close as possible, and the other guy had to snatch it out of me. And the drill was कि कुछ भी हो जाए छोड़ना नहीं है. And I'm obviously very competitive, तो नहीं छोड़ना है. At some point in the drill, I ended up on the floor. Ball यहाँ बीच में है, this guy on top of me, and still not letting go. But ultimately, when the guy was much stronger and bigger than me, so I lost. He got the ball, but after the, we separated. I realized कि यार थोड़ा chest पे pain हो रहा है. And I thought कि कुछ anyway muscle sprain वगैरह हो गया होगा, तो I put a Volini and so on. But the pain wouldn't go away for many days. And then I ended up going to hospital for X-ray and had a small, hairline fracture on my rib. So that was my very first class at cult in life. But somehow, being a determined entrepreneur I went back after 2 weeks, still continued talking to Rishabh, and then realized, it probably could be a great partnership for both of us.
Wow. So this was after the 15 million?
This was after 15
But
million.
What were you doing till the cult acquisition? Like, were you guys trying to build your own centers? Or how were you trying to?
नहीं यार, fitness चालू भी नहीं हुआ था. So I think I don't exactly remember money came in or not. We were talking to investors, and we got at least assurance on day one कि yes, we are want to fund, there's a term sheet, etc. And we were studying the space. So I think the most of the time was going into one is really talking to lots of consumers, look at whoever was doing anything in India in the health space or healthy lifestyle space, studying a lot of global players and trying to develop a thought process. So we were in that more creative jamming zone where just happened to serendipitously run into cult और उसको देख के लग रहा था कि काफी potential है. तो somewhere it's like prepared mind meeting the opportunity kind of situation.
Correct.
So most of effort was on preparation and accidentally मिल गया cult. तो
And when you say you acquired the business, is a business, it is that real estate also?
It was basically just one center. So it was obviously in fitness generally people don't own the building or land. But the lease and the format and the training team and the founders, it was a very small acquisition, just negligible, compared to, money we raised and all of that. It was very easy to start. But I think so we got an excellent brand name in cult.
I did not know that you had acquired cult. I thought cult was something you guys came up with.
We can take some credit in, really modifying it, making it accessible and all of that. But I think the core idea was Rishabh and his brother Ritesh who started this. And so we got a great set of initial trainers. We got that fitness culture also because these guys, prior 2 years and the initial version of cult, these guys had a lot of these foreign trainers. So you had a Muay Thai guy from Thailand, a boxing guy from Jamaica, some Russian guy doing kettlebell thing and so on. Pretty, exotic, hardcore. But I think getting that culture and people who are genuinely passionate about this space, I think helped us because for me, before that, I was just doing everyday fitness. But getting these professionals as part of our fold who were part of initial brainstorming and conceptualizing, I think was a great advantage.
I'm sure. How big was your team when you acquired cult?
Less than 10 people.
And were they all fit people? Your first 15 people?
Fit one way or other. And the reason I say that is a lot of people initially joined us, they were a sports or fitness enthusiast.
Okay.
So everybody used to play something. In fact, big part of our culture in first 2 years was we would play some sport, as a group. Every week, we'll go to some nearby sports arena and play soccer and volleyball. And the tradition has continued. We have many teams within cult. In fact, we just concluded last week our what we call fit games. So it's an annual sports day where all kind of competition happen, very strongly fought for and people compete heavily. A lot of people unfortunately get injured as well, given the level of,
chest fracture and so on.
Chest fracture, from day one onwards, right? But, we had, so in the initial days, a lot of people, we found there's a good niche of people who come from, let's say, your Amazons and Flipkarts and Myntras of the world, but had a strong passion for sport and fitness. So for them, it was a new age company, tech enabled, VC funded, yet creating opportunity for them to pursue the passion. So I think we have that culture, big time.
But tell me a little bit about how you thought about post acquisition, and I want to dive a little,
sure.
Because for me it's very intriguing. Is to think about the 0 to 1 journey, especially when you acquire, first revenues are in, team is now 15-20 people. You could have done a million things. I think the critical decisions are कि हमको करना क्या नहीं है, right? I think about Healthify Me, for example. Sure. I thought about, I can think about nutrition, which you guys have done. I could think about meditation apps like Calm. I could think about organizing sports tournaments like Huddle. Like there are many large, deep markets you could have gone after. And knowing traditional wisdom is to say, एक चीज पकड़ो और उसको सही से करो. How did you go from that point to into the evolution
of cure.fit? So first of all, I will not say that we navigated that thing very well. I think at some point we also got carried away, but I think we managed to stay reasonably focused for 18 months. See, fitness, was a great starting point for us to start, because when people conscious about health in general, पहला काम वो करते हैं जिम ज्वाइन कर लेते हैं, right, or start going for morning walk, or like physical activity is the first thing people do.
Correct.
Right. So for us, that was a good logical starting point, and we also got this good insight that this group fitness as a trend is taking off globally. Group fitness also dramatically lowers the startup cost from an individual point of view.
Correct.
So that part was very clear, and we also happened to find a really good starting point in Cult. So that's well and good. Correct. And retrospectively, we should have continued on the journey. But this is.
But Cult, hold on. But Cult mein, was it only MMA, or was this were there other group classes?
No, so these guys 3-4 group classes. There was a boxing, kickboxing, MMA. They also have a strength format, but it was quite hardcore. And even the day when we were acquiring, it was clear that this can work, but only for very niche audience. We need to really simplify. So as we start working with Rishabh, right, in first 6 months the MMA ring went away, and we introduced dance classes. So in Zumba in those days, we changed it later. We introduced yoga class. We really toned down strength and strength and conditioning class. We also pretty much stopped most contact. I mean, the hardcore MMA, you are wrestling and you are grabbing each other and rolling on the floor together and all this, that's how the sport is played.
Correct.
But that does not translate into, imagine, for an average person walk in and end up in this heavy contact situation, it can get pretty, unmanageable. So we simplified all of that, put in a lot of, standard processes, and also made it a lot of fun. We created some rituals, etc. So that's where a little bit, the product mindset took over. Like we knew that we are trying to make it a, if not mass, at least very large enough audience.
From an acceptability standpoint.
From acceptability point of view, scalability point of view. Like, you can get one Muay Thai trainer from Thailand, but you can't get 100.
Correct.
Like, you need to train trainers here, right? So it needs to be all driven by a playbook. It needs to be very repeatable. Earlier days of Cult, obviously my example of injury, but injuries are very common, but you can't run a large business if a lot of people are getting injured. So how
injury is directly correlated to lack of repetition.
Right, absolutely. Right?
Correct.
So how do you standardize things so that the incidence of injury goes down dramatically and so on. So a lot of for 6 to 9 months effort went into just simplifying and making the product just the very easy to use.
Amazing. And did you quickly go? I had 2 questions while you were talking, right? One question was, as you took away the MMA ring, went lower on contact, and kind of put in dance classes, etc., which is what made cult.fit so acceptable to all of us.
Right.
At that time, I remember living in Vasant Kunj. C9 में एक वो center खुला था, फिर वो मसूदपुर market के पीछे एक center था. I was like, cool, there are 3 centers right around my house. So you're right, it made. But did it take away from what Rishabh and Ritesh were building? Did they feel कि यार जो हमने बनाया है वो अलग हो रहा है, etc.?
No. So Rishabh and Ritesh both are still there.
Okay.
They were very senior role in the company, and I think for them, my first few conversation was look, you bring the fitness expertise and fitness passion. What me and Ankit bring to a table is the able to really scale up. If you work with us, we'll make it 500 center business in 5 years. And in retrospect, I just pulled out a number out of thin air at the time, but some confidence was there. And today, we have 600 centers, right? So we've crossed a milestone and looking to go to 1,000 centers. So for them, that ability to build a business at such a large scale and eventually impact millions of people are way more valuable versus staying hardcore. They can still do. I mean, now they have enough and more empowerment to build one more boutique gym which can do even ultra hardcore, right?
Correct.
So they have the freedom. I'm sure they probably do it also on their free time. But the ability to build this large scale business and positively impact the lives of so many people. Till date, about 1.5 million people have gone through cure.fit ecosystem. Many of them have lost weight and achieved a lot of fitness goals. Some have even climbed including Everest, many mountain peaks and long treks and this, that, right? So I think they're starting to, and Rishabh and Ritesh, obviously, rightfully so, feel very proud of, being able to create that impact for so many
That
people.
speaks a lot about the maturity of those two human beings.
Absolutely.
To say, we are not going to be rigid about this. And, and also to you to identify in the first 3 months of a company.
Right.
मेरे को तो पता ही नहीं था, honestly. I don't know, maybe it's a experience.
You are absolutely right. I think, and kudos to both of them. I agree. I think a lot of time, very early stage entrepreneurs may not have that maturity. I probably didn't have, when I was starting out in 2007, right? But these guys could see, the upside. They could, they understood the trade-off. What they're giving up, what they're gaining back in return, and having the humility to accept that, in this setup, we'll be able to do something that we can't do on our own. I think it has turned out a brilliant partnership, but without, I think, adequate maturity on both sides, this wouldn't have happened.
No, I completely agree. And acquisitions are hard, man. Acquisitions is something which cure.fit did very consistently for a period of time. You, I think, found pockets of excellence, founders you liked, or geographies you wanted access to, etc., or centers, and brought them into your fold and scaled them up. Talk about
it. I think somewhere I think I'm probably can claim that I found some kind of personal product market fit for acquisition. I think on both sides of the table multiple times now, and what I realized that ultimately a lot of the acquisitions boil down to just human psychology. If let's say I'm acquiring your company or you are acquiring my company, at some point we'll figure out the commercials and terms and all of that, right? But how's your and my chemistry, and how's the give and take? And see, any acquisition you don't start being equal. It's just a chance that one company is probably more funded, better valuation, higher revenue, right? Now you can easily make me feel that you are that guy with higher revenue and higher valuation, and I'm this guy, right? Or you can make me feel equal despite the difference or those various metrics. I think ability to make people feel equal, having their voice heard, respecting their culture. Like if you're going to acquire my company, is going to come with certain culture with this. You can take a high ground and say like now Bombay shaving company culture is what we're going to use everywhere.
Correct.
Or you can say no, your company culture is unique. You and your team member built. We value it. We respect it. And those things make a big difference. And one example, I think when Flipkart acquired Myntra, they were very mindful of that. Myntra had a very unique culture, and both the Flipkart founders in those days, Sachin and Binny, they went out of their way to preserve Myntra culture to the extent that they will also limit how many times they go to Myntra office. They didn't want to be seen in Myntra office because a lot of people interpret कि यार अब ये लोग आके change करना शुरू कर देंगे, right?
Correct.
So I think the acquiring company, appreciating that. Similarly, the company getting acquired, understanding we are getting acquired because there are some unique capabilities, in the setup we are going, and can I proactively leverage those capabilities so that I enhance, my core purpose. So I think some of those, those human dynamics, if people can take care of, I think I have not counted, but I'm pretty sure I've been involved in at least 15 situations of either getting acquiring, mostly fortunately acquiring, but I think at least 10, 11 of them have gone really well.
Wow. And how did you then sharpen the strategy to say we will acquire centers or we'll acquire setups which have got, what is the largest acquisition you guys did?
I think the largest acquisition is more recently, but early days we did, I think in fact, so after cult started to go well, we realized that for our ambition was to build this healthy lifestyle platform and solve for everything in healthy lifestyle, fitness, food, mental health, right? And we said we can start from scratch, but start from scratch take at least 12 to 18 months.
Correct.
Can we find a interesting company in each of those space? So we ended up acquiring something called Christie's Kitchen, which became our initial cloud kitchen for EatFit. We acquired something called Serenity, which became the base for MindFit, and we got Dr. Shambhat through the acquisition. Probably a top mental health
expert
person in the country, right? He worked very closely with us for subsequent years post that. Cure.fit is something I think we were not able to find anything, so we ended up starting from scratch. But I think once we understood that we have the capital and the valuation currency, and we can acquire a very early stage company with probably in the later stage of product market fit at an attractive valuation, it was and the confidence that we felt that we can create an environment for these entrepreneurs to thrive. In fact, we almost saw as a positive that we can inject a lot more entrepreneurial talent in the company through this acquisition, right? So that was a third positive. I will not claim all of it went really well, but just explaining how we thought about back then.
No, agree, because 70 people, like statistically 70 to 80% of acquisitions don't work out because many times वही होता है ना, like what you see when you are going to shop versus when you wear it, the journey is very different, right?
Colors come out after a few washes.
Then it becomes real, right? And then you think that this is not exciting anymore, and then you might not wear it as much and so on. And it's not because of lack of intent during the process. It's because over a period of time, sometimes you over index on the synergy and so on. But in your case, you say because you were also building 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 journeys, and the companies were critical to your growth.
That's right.
It was not accretive, it was multiplicative, right? So then that's why the relationship with the new founders and so on was super critical, especially because they were creating value for internally as well.
That's right.
How did you merge all those cultures together? Because fitness is also very culture driven attitude, right?
See, I think because those companies were so small, we actually borrowed their culture. So a lot of fitness culture for us came from cult acquisition. It was not a matter of merging it. I think we had our own strength in operations, scaling, branding, and so on. So I think it was more borrowing what's best about the company, the culture of the company we are acquiring, and what we are building. That is very early stage, and it's also Cure.fit was also, in fact, Cure.fit was a younger company compared to cult, right?
Correct.
So हमारा क्या culture होगा शुरू के दिनों में, right?
Correct.
So that way it was easier problem back then. Recently we have done some large acquisition. Our biggest acquisition was this company OneFit Plus, which makes indoor equipment, etc. And there what we did, consciously we decided that first 2 years we will not look at any integration at all. So Mohit was Mohit Mathur, who was the founder. He's still running OneFit Plus fairly independently. Their headquarters in Raipur. I have only gone there once. Shamik, who works very closely with them, he still only goes once a quarter. So there are a lot of operating independence, right? And where most of the Cure.fit playbook is available to Mohit, you pick and choose. You figure out, who can be helpful to you. So a little bit very much Mohit led, right? So I think when you acquire, the Myntra example I gave, you need to as much as possible try to preserve the culture and not integrate. Integrations don't go well. There is a time and pace. I mean, if you look at now, in Myntra example, it's very deeply integrated. I would say 80% of companies integrated.
Correct.
Right? But that happened very, very slowly over a period of time, right? The different people come and so on. You build mutual comfort. So I think there is an art to it. If you try to force it, accelerate it. I mean, if you've seen during pandemic, there's so many spate of acquisitions. I think there are recently, whatever news of Whitehead Junior, etc. Right? I mean, a lot of these high-profile acquisitions.
Correct.
But I'm not sure what was the pace of integration and how much space is created, and so on. So you are right. I mean, the 70-80% don't work out for a variety of reasons.
Correct. And especially in our industry, consumer products, for example, very, very acquisition friendly.
Right.
And large global companies, Unilever, Procter, Colgates, Reckitt's of the world have shown how to make them successful. Because what you do is, I think the playbook there is very simple. Ki we own shelves of retailers in these categories.
Correct.
हम साबुन बेचते हैं, तेल बेचते हैं, डिटर्जेंट बेचते हैं, जो भी है, टूथपेस्ट बेचते हैं. We understand the consumer absolutely to the end.
Right.
We have a distribution engine that works like a machine to own that shelf. अब उस shelf में ये वाला जो है ना, यहाँ पे हमारा share नहीं है क्योंकि right to win नहीं है. यहाँ पे plug and play कर लो.
That's right.
That's the model. So now once the model is known, then it becomes easier. But in Flipkart, Myntra's case also, it was still an evolving synergy discovery thing. So I think kudos to you and Sachin and Binny and the entire leadership team for making it work, realizing that I have been to the Myntra Flipkart office, of course, a while when I had, in fact, Ankit was my second interview and Puneet Soni was my third interview.
All right, okay.
So I have been to both offices. Mekin Maheshwari also was. So I was interviewed by a lot of your early colleagues.
Right.
But I distinctly remember going to the Myntra office because one of my interviews was there. And thinking, यार ये तो बहुत ही अलग. It's a very different Ananya had just joined them. So I remember sitting with her in the office, and it was a very different place. But amazing, kudos to that. But tell me about 2016, acquiring Cult, then spending 12 to 18 months realizing we are going to do this, being acquisition friendly.
Right.
Where were you when 2019, 2020 happened? When COVID was like a boom, like your momentum train suddenly the tracks would have been kind of removed.
Right. So now we have some the benefit of hindsight, and we can talk about it in a more calmer mind. But it was very intense roller coaster, to say the least, right? So it's like for cure.fit, the journey from 2016 to early 20, it's been like a honeymoon that goes on forever, right?
Correct.
4 years of almost nothing going wrong. Whenever we need money, somebody will give us money.
कब तक कितना raise किया था आपने तब तक?
I think Series C हो गया था, probably D actually.
Okay.
So pretty much every year we would have raised maybe about $150 million by that time.
Every year?
No, total, accumulative.
Okay, cumulative. Okay.
Right, so we have raised this $150 million. At least one product was doing really well, Cult. Each Fit also, we are seeing great traction from scale point of view. There were some unit economics challenges on that business, but still we were feeling pretty good.
Eat Fit was a brand that was selling nutritious food basically.
Yeah, the idea was, we wanted to make everyday healthy food. So your basic, thali, jo ghar ka khana type ka, or even some Western food, salad, etc. In a affordable, healthy, that was the intent. Unit economics, I think, was turning out to a little more challenging on that, way more on that later. But by and large, in fact, Ankit and I used to talk यार यहाँ पे सब कुछ ठीक चला, गलत क्या होगा और कब होगा, because पहले तो कोई देखा नहीं, things just go well, कुछ तो फटती है बुरी तरह से, तो यहाँ पे नहीं हो रहा है. And then one day the universe conspired and say कि अभी देख लो business. So COVID happens and the business is completely shut down, and our revenue go from literally 100 to 0. I mean, many companies did, but for us also, given that we're offline business, and I think gyms and movie theater were the both single out कि सबसे ज़्यादा कोविड वहीं से फैल रहा है, तो उनको सबसे पहले बंद कर दो और सबसे बाद में खोलेंगे, right?
So कितने सेंटर थे आपके, क्या रेवेन्यू था, how big was your team, what was
the
business like?
We were nearly $100 million revenue run rate between food and fitness, about 250 centers in many cities. And the thing is, a lot of products, some were mature product, but some were just getting built. Some were half cooked. If you look at any meal which is half cooked and you pause it, it just looks disgusting, right?
Inedible.
Yeah, it's inedible, right? So we had we have this whole business is paused, revenue gone away, cost is obviously there. So we had to think very deeply. I think it's probably, as a business professional, probably hardest crisis I have personally dealt with. But then again fortunately, I was not first-time entrepreneur, and I was not seeing my first crisis in life. I seen a lot of crises, both in Silicon Valley companies, other people company, and Myntra journey also, many crises and so on, right? So I think in some ways I was mentally prepared. So between me and our management team, we took long, hard look at कि अब ये क्या चल रहा है, कितने पैसे बैंक में हैं, what do we have in the portfolio, what is working, what is not working, and then we made a lot of bold calls. Our entire business over subsequent 18 months got completely transformed. I think it was summarized in one phrase, this whole idea of shrinking to the core. We say, हमारा core क्या है? Core is fitness. So let's double down. But instead of slowing down, let's accelerate. Even pandemic, we are struggling, but the fitness industry is also struggling. So can we consolidate the whole industry while people are on the back foot? So let's play a very aggressive game in fitness, and let's not do anything else. So बाकी जो कुछ भी है, या तो we spin it off as an independent company, जहाँ पे there is enough meat, or we shut it down. So we took a lot of shutdown calls. Eat Fit was spun out as an independent company. Since then, Ankit has transformed into a portfolio of all kind of food brands.
Amazing.
Health, non-health, and doing really well.
I was talking to him the other day, it's amazing, he said, and by the way, that guy's understanding of consumer and food is off the charts.
Right.
He was like, yaar, Domino's pizza is 5,500 crores, लेकिन gourmet pizza में ये है, लेकिन यहाँ पे cheese में ये आ सकता है, लेकिन सस्ते pizza में ये आ सकता है, tastier, healthier, but acceptance is lower. So now how do we build this up? Then he understands biryani.
Right.
Like,
so in his case, again, a very good example, he is always very passionate about food. So in some way, cure.fit के अंदर health food में constraint है कि और कुछ कर नहीं सकते हैं. But food is very diverse.
Correct.
All kind of options that people's tastes are evolving. They're demanding different type of differentiated products. So I think he and he obviously is a very strong consumer guy. He understands scale, all of that. So he's able to marry his passion with his competence to build an outstanding business. So anyhow, we spun that off. We had this cure.fit where we really like the IP, But we by the time we realized the primary care is a tough long-term business and we can't sustain it. So we spun that off also, but we pivoted into solving for diabetes. So we rebranded as SugarFit and made it an independent company, doing quite well now. So basically what happened, so before we were doing too many things. Post-pandemic we are only doing fitness, but expanded our fitness portfolio. बाकी सब कुछ था या तो बंद हो गया है and two independent companies.
Correct.
So I think in some way our business was a lot clear. So it's one of those things, people, it's very easy to say in retrospect, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Correct.
But basic COVID is exactly that for, cure.fit.
Wow, that's amazing. And did you, like, at any point in time, did you feel the weight of that $150 million? Ki boss, this needs to be like returned, because bootstrap companies have a lot more, or lack of capital has a lot more flexibility. But
I think before the weight, I want to use a different. We actually we had raised 150 before, and we raised a fresh 125 literally weeks before pandemic, right? So we had we had actually almost $150 million in bank. So more than the weight, it felt like a weighted blanket, with a lot of cushion and comfort and coziness inside it, right? Because आपका business तो बंद हो गया, but still you have $150 million in bank.
Correct.
So which gives you a lot of firepower to think.
Correct.
Like, I mean, I don't know, if we had instead of 150, we had 25 million in the bank, I don't know, life would have been very different. We certainly would not have been able to go very aggressively on fitness or even spun out these companies. In the EatFit we invested $10 million, SugarFit we invested $5 million, right? So we had this wiggle room because of cash. And somewhere I think this is where, being a second-time entrepreneur, thinking about fundraising ahead of time, I think most people think 1 साल का runway तो काफ़ी है. For me, like 2 साल से कम का runway तो सो नहीं सकते, right? It's so some of those things help, but I think the money was an advantage. I think we raised maybe bit too much money ahead of time, but I think in the crisis time it came in super handy.
Absolutely, that's what everyone says about fundraising, right? Ki raise money for a rainy day.
Right.
Till date, I don't know what rainy day means until COVID happened. Ki boss, it is like, this is like an extended 4-year monsoon, and you're absolutely right. How did the we'll come to the acquisition separately, but what were the, like, one is of course COVID, but what was different, or what were the learnings that were completely different with cure.fit from your earlier entrepreneurial journeys?
Yeah, I think there are many different learnings. So one is, see, when we were on fashion retailing, the fashion is a very large category. I remember in the Myntra days, I also used to talk about it as a $50 billion category, maybe $100 billion, right? The market that Flipkart was playing was even hundreds of billions of dollars.
Correct.
So fitness in India today is barely just about $1 billion. So when that's a relatively niche category. We are a very dominant player in the niche, but I think the market size itself puts a ceiling on the growth. So the kind of challenges are when the market is big, it's very easy to achieve scale. When the market is not very big, scale becomes difficult. But we raise money with the scale intent.
Correct.
So a little bit, that's different. A second thing, I think the Myntra was, although there are offline operations, all the customer acquisition and brand building, everything very much digital in nature. Like when you're a fitness business, you're running gyms, operations are a very big part of it.
Correct.
Like the product we deliver is the group class. Every class, trainer need to show up, they need to perform for 50 minutes, at high energy, high competence, high engagement.
Yeah.
So building that operational muscle, which I think is still a work in progress. So that is been quite different. Also, we attempted to, tackle multiple categories simultaneously. In this, I think where we went wrong is there is synergy, but synergy inside the customer's body. Like मेरे को अपनी health के लिए सब कुछ करना है, but business के बीच में कोई synergy नहीं है.
Correct.
So that turned out to be a very difficult problem for us. That now suddenly 4 years into it, we had 4 business. We are solving for gyms, we are solving for cloud kitchens, we are solving for mental health, we are solving for primary care. And in our mental model की यार customer को सब चाहिए, उसके बिना health कर नहीं सकते.
लेकिन आप you cannot share anything.
But there is absolutely nothing, right? Even we are finding it difficult to share customer because customer will also start कि अभी fitness कर लेता हूँ, food बाद में करूँगा, right? और मेरे को खाली stress के लिए meditation करना है, but मेरे को gym नहीं जाना, right?
Correct.
तो I think a little bit this, we probably got carried away.
Correct.
This is probably advantage of being disadvantage of being a second-time entrepreneur and having actually a lot of capital, because you may have a crazy vision and unfortunately the capital also to play out a crazy vision.
You're right. You're basically saying कि अगर market बहुत बड़ा है, you're a dominant player in the market, But if the market is not very big and you raise a lot of money, then the pressure of growth makes you do things which are not synergistic, and especially when an acquisition friendly company and so on, it becomes.
There's a pressure of growth, and a lot of what I realize, I mean, a lot of pressure you only create yourself also, right? Is it coming from a Myntra and Flipkart somewhere? It was almost a given in my head कि अब बड़ा business ही बनाना है, like बड़ा छोटा relative होता है, but I mean the scale that those companies were at, so we are always thinking not acknowledging to ourselves कि this is a small market. In this you can build a more efficient, profitable business. It will probably compound forever.
Correct.
But it can't compare to scale because so that's I think it's probably the biggest difference.
One of the things that I am realizing a lot more, especially with new age people, I met Sameer Khetarpal. I don't know whether you know this gentleman. He's now the new CEO of Domino's Pizza.
Okay.
I met him at the Bangalore airport 2 days back when after we had met. I met Rahul, who we both know, and now I'm talking to you, and even my own experiences. There is a very high amount of, kind of increasing respect for large companies who have cracked operations and execution excellence at scale. For example, Addy, who we just met, 40,000 member team, and Reckitt is one of the most operationally intense companies in the world, culturally, right? That Brett Bart and all of Rakesh Kapoor and everyone kind of built that out. Even Rahul was saying, यार हम लोगों को लगता है कि hotel, he said it in the podcast, कि hotel industry में इनको कुछ आता नहीं है, हम tech करते ही है. You then suddenly realize what it means to run a business where 70 or 72% utilization में negative EBITDA and positive EBITDA का फर्क पड़ जाता है. So it's survival to success. Or Sameer was saying 1,700 Domino's locations in India, right? From Lakhimpur to Moradabad to Ooty, and each one is different, but each one has to have the culture of Domino's and the acquisition, and 1% utilization of the kitchen changes everything. Did cult teach you that in a way, because you were very offline, physically centric?
Still teaching, still learning. Maybe I'll also ask you for introduction to Sameer. I think. In fact, today I'm in Delhi for a few days. My primary motivation for this visit, for this trip, is to visit all our centers in Gurgaon, Delhi, Noida. And you're absolutely right. The so many variations at the center level, where the location is, which floor, how is the floor plate, right? What does the demographic in that center look like, and so on. And doing this operation scale, I think it's. Given that we have tech background, and there obviously Myntra, Flipkart also has very different kind of operations, so we have a lot of those playbooks, but I don't think those playbooks are necessarily designed from retail up. They are probably more from more top down kind of processes.
Correct.
So system works, but it's not shining at an individual node level. So I think reconfiguring that, where the center of decision making almost is at the individual center, at least all the insights from that are flowing up, and it's a more self-learning system, which is highly customized. I think that is our next phase of evolution for us to go from 600 centers to 1,000 centers and elevate the experience in each of those centers, etc. I think we'll have to become much more stronger operational company. I think we have probably a few years of really hard, deep work ahead of us.
No, I used to underestimate how challenging operational work is, because I thought operations is not a difficult problem to solve.
Right.
Like you can solve it. Until I started seeing retail environments for brands. And even then I started realizing कि हाँ थोड़ा difficult लेकिन कर लेंगे दुकान चलानी. How hard can it actually be? Until again then you see what world class companies do.
Right.
So again I don't know whether we were talking about DMart.
Right.
But we took 3.5 years to convince DMart that we were a worthy company.
Right.
Now our conversation with DMart was always कि हम छोटे हैं, we are 300 crores, you are 50,000 crores. So there's always a power distance. But when we used to meet them, they never made that known to us. They always told us that we need to be sizable out of your revenue. We want to be 10% of your business. I was like, wow. ये सिखाया उन्होंने हमको कि यार कंपनी कितनी भी छोटी बड़ी हो, हमारा शेयर वहाँ पे इम्पोर्टेंट है. So they taught me to think about market share versus market size.
Right.
Second thing is category head, senior बंदा, number 2, number 3 guy there, knows कि गाजियाबाद वाले स्टोर में अच्छा वो कुछ तो चल रहा था रिव्यू में, गाजियाबाद स्टोर में this store we have some metric कि 20,000 rupees per store per SKU per month. ये हमारा टारगेट है. तो गाजियाबाद में क्यों नहीं हिट हुआ? He is thinking, then this is a guy who's sitting in the HO, probably like looking at millions of brands. लेकिन अच्छा वो गाजियाबाद वाला तो वो बेसमेंट पे जाके है ना, वहाँ पे ये कैटेगरी वहाँ बैठती है, तो शायद कंज्यूमर वहाँ जा नहीं रहा होगा। I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Then he's like, यार वहाँ ट्रक जो है वो वहाँ बाहर होता है, कंज्यूमर आता नहीं है। And then he's looking at me saying, tell me why do we have a truck outside the store? And I'm clueless. मैंने बोला, I don't know. बोलता है यार, our sugar inventory, sugar, rice and दाल inventory कितने दिन की होती है बताओ? मैंने बोला होगा 2-3 दिन की होगी, बहुत सही करते होंगे आप। 2-2 घंटे की होती है। तो we have sugar replenishment every 2 hours because वो basement में है। I was blown away that this senior guy has found an insight as to why our number is not getting it, because there's a truck outside and the truck is there because of this. And I was like, we have so many miles to go before we can even start thinking like this, because institutional excellence in operations is probably the hallmark of every sustainable large organization.
And
across tech.
Your example is a very strong reminder. I think it's basically, I mean, you're taking an example of a very, senior person in the organization who has such, micro insight, and that can't come from just sitting in the headquarters and going through numbers.
Correct.
Because they are very aggregated. You have to spend time on ground.
Correct.
I think institutionally that from the senior most people in the organization. I'm just repeating it as a reminder to myself and for my team also, because, we are a very distributed retail organization. So like spending the time and developing really individual store level, initially fact-based and understanding, which will eventually become intuition.
Correct.
And you're able to pattern match and see, recognize, what is off and so on. And it will become faster and faster. But I think the upfront time investment and institutional, I know in FMCG companies, especially Unilever, like spending 1 day a week on ground is just something everybody from top to bottom follow, right?
Absolutely. Even the management training program for 3 I used to think my seniors from IIM Lucknow वो कि वो लोग जा रहे हैं 4 महीने के लिए, all of them are sent into super rural part of India, ये है वो, and I'm like क्या करते होंगे जाके, like they used to live in some consumers, like वो शक्ति अम्मा के घर पे or whatever they would go. I would be like, how is this worthwhile to the organization at all? But I realized that the small things that you learn on the ground are absolutely invaluable.
Also, ये बताओ तुम Bombay Shaving Company, you must, how many people you watch shave in front of you in their
millions of times. Millions of times. I noticed your beard the moment I saw you. I also like I
recommendations for me?
No, you seem to have, I think
I never experimented with beard, so maybe that's one thing I can look into.
No, I think beard. So for me, for example, I started losing hair very early, right? So I started shaving my head because when you start losing hair, you don't want like half of it.
Right.
तो मैंने वो करना चालू किया, तो मेरे को तब पता था कि यार head shave is a problematic thing because one, skin and bone is very close to each other.
Right.
Flesh is what makes shaving easier. तो गालों पे flesh होता है तो आसानी से होता है. But chin or this part becomes harder.
But look, I want to understand. I think when you actually go to people's bathrooms and watch them shave, just I'm very curious, because for me it's a your method of building consumer insight. I think it's generic, it's applicable to all things. So I'm very curious to know. Like, tell me what some of the experiences.
So when it comes to shaving, one is because almost everyone who's above the age of 18 or 19 shaves with some frequency.
Right.
So you can always go to people who are comfortable shaving around you.
Right.
Shaving is a private thing.
Right.
It's inside the bathroom and most people do it alone.
Right.
Most people shave while closing the door. They don't leave it open also, right? It's unlike brushing your teeth, which is a most households in India, someone will take the toothbrushing and move around the house, pick up some water or kuch saman rakh diya hai jo bhi hai. Some people talk on the phone also while doing it, right? Shaving is far more private. So we got our families and friends to shave. The disadvantage of that, I remember when we were testing our first razor, is my father came to the house, and my father has, like most parents or any parent, has a bias for their child, and he took one of our first razors inside the bathroom. I said, ये shave करके आओ आप, और 3 दिन shave मत करना. तो 3 दिन से shave नहीं किया था, दाढ़ी उनकी बढ़ गई थी काफी. आए और बाप रे, he looked like he had come out of Battle of Panipat. पूरा यहाँ खून पूरा. मैंने बोला, what happened to you? You like, outstanding shave. I said, not really. It's not an outstanding. And me and Ronak and Rohit and I think 4-5 ही लोग थे हम कंपनी में. हम लोग अंकल क्या, like I remember Rohit was saying, uncle, please. He went and got Dettol, antiseptic. But he would continue to say great shave. So that was the disadvantage, that people want to please you, but we got.
I didn't take my father to the first game. Me with a broken rib. Then him.
No, but that was the issue. Like we got people to shave in front of us. I think over a period of time, we started calling consumers to the office.
Right.
We would do pizza and beer on Saturdays and so on, and we have basins and like we then try to make it a more fun experience. Women shaving, for example, when we launched women, we that was where insight generation was a lot newer.
Sure.
Male shaving, you talk to a great category manager who's worked at Gillette and all, there's enough internet material, etc. for you to know. Women shaving was like, so for example, I'll give you some of the insights on women. It happened during COVID, the period you're talking about. Women in our company had hair on their bodies. All waxing salons were shut. And कि boss, हम लोग Bombay shaving company में काम करते हैं, हमारे लिए product ही नहीं है. तो we said, sure, let's try and make one. And the insights were that it's a 20,000 crore market, okay? Almost 98% sitting in services.
Wow.
DIY में brand है नहीं, wheat है जो racket का है, but it's a cream, so it's not the best DIY experience. And Venus है जो Gillette का basically Gillette का razor pink purple बना के बंदियों को बेचते हैं. Not the way it's a 150 crore का brand, so it won't scale. And the insight was women shave either outside the bathroom or in the bathing area. They don't shave at the basin. कोई बैठने की जगह नहीं है, या फिर it's not comfortable. Second is women shave ankle to thigh, wrist to arm. Hair is sparser, longer and thinner. Women are very good with the razor. Even first time shavers are very careful. उनको cutting वटिंग से कोई फायदा, like they don't worry about cutting. Men worry about cutting because they're clumsy human beings. Women are not. What they worry about is कि जब मेरा razor यहाँ से यहाँ आएगा, यहाँ के बाल निकलने चाहिए. With razors which have got blades very close to each other, the blade area gets completely covered by hair. By the time it reaches here, तो यहाँ पे वो ऐसे करते रहते हैं कि बाल निकलते नहीं. Like ये नहीं चाहिए मेरे को. And this was mind blowing to me because I had no idea. मेरे को तो बंदियाँ बोलती थी कि यार नहीं शेव नहीं करना, कड़क बाल आएंगे. The issue was not that. The issue was they had never had a great experience. So we said no. We need a razor where the blade is always exposed, independent of the length of the stroke. That was the insight changer. And then we designed the razor, and then we are now amongst the top razors with very little marketing spend.
Incredible.
But what we realize is you talk to consumers enough.
Yeah.
They're there to help. And then observationally you can kind of, insights are not very complicated in our world.
So you also in many ways converted COVID into an opportunity to build a whole big category.
Big time. For us, we like, okay, women is a big business. We were men grooming. Suddenly realized that there's a huge opportunity. Women were buying Bombay shaving company to gift to their husbands, boyfriends, brothers, Raksha Bandhan, Valentine's, were big events for us. We're like, cool, we already have women consumers. Why don't we give them something that is relevant to them today? So we then did it. Unlike men, where Gillette and Philips are big incumbent competitors for us, in women it's about salons to DIY. So for us, that was the issue.
But incredible, yeah. This, talking to consumers and being in their house and observing them, it never gets out of fashion. It's always
unbelievable.
Bring something new to the table.
And मेरे को हमेशा लगता था कि यार every incremental consumer is not going to tell me something I don't know. But if you keep your eyes open, it is just spectacular how, like one of the classical examples of entrepreneurs building in consumer for me is this company. Like, have you seen Pet Safa? This brand called Pet Safa. Okay, so this is an entrepreneur who's again not one of those celebrated entrepreneurs, etc. His insight was simple. Indian men between the age of 35 to 50 are insecure and don't talk about their insecurities because they're young fathers. They're losing the prime of their lives or holding on to it, so they don't accept that they're weak in front of anyone. That was the insight. Now that I'm telling you, you will think it's obvious, but to convert that into business. So he's like, insecurity पकड़ो, solve करो, क्योंकि बात नहीं कर रहा, brand बात करेगा. पहला insecurity क्या है? बाल जा रहे. Hair loss is number one. He built out this brand called Kesh King. Small manufacturing facility in Haridwar, amazing marketing, UP, Bihar, 2 markets, and pharma distribution. Single screen theaters. He used couple of local stars as brand ambassadors, built it out, sold it to Imami for 1,000 crores plus. Bootstrap business, beautiful. Then he's like, cool. What worked in the playbook? Hindi name, insecurity, and clear messaging. What's the number 2 thing that happens to men in that age group is piles or hemorrhoids, constipation. Again, embarrassed to talk about it, but you see all these ads all over the world. Doctors, but no one talks about it. Consumers go to the pharmacist, ask for the question. He's like, let's make a brand. He built out this yellow color ka dabba, जिसके अंदर there was this product called Pet Safa. Okay, Pet Safa was not a stool softener or anything. It was a hardcore laxative, which would reduce your weight by 2 kilos the next morning. It was instant. Okay, and the logo was a guy sitting on a commode. He was blatant about that fact that I will solve for you. Again, same. Raju Srivastava was the brand ambassador, etc. Built it out. अभी वो 300-400 crore का brand बन गया है, growing like crazy.
Sure.
And now he started Dr. Ortho. Third issue, as this consumer gets older, joint pain, back pain, etc. Dr. Ortho.
This is like indigenous homegrown FMCG in the making.
Mukesh, I genuinely think कि मेरे को तो ये आएगा ही नहीं.
Right.
कि हम लोग new age D2C ये सब करते रहेंगे.
I'll also add one example which I just recently heard. I hope my facts are correct, but but direction is still fine. I think someone was telling me the Move story.
Correct.
The Move entrepreneur, how he built the brand. His insight was कि पहले लोग Iodex use करते बचपन से Iodex, but Iodex नहीं करते, कपड़े पे दाग लग जाते थे. तो his thing was कि can I build a Iodex alternative जिससे कपड़ों पे दाग नहीं लगे. That's it. That's the insight, and the Move has done incredibly well as a brand.
Have you met Darshan Bhai?
I have not.
You must meet Darshan Bhai.
Sure.
So Darshan Bhai is for me like the king of these things. What people do. So Move was one story. You're absolutely right. The one is दाग नहीं लगना चाहिए. Second is सुगंध अच्छी होनी चाहिए. Iodex and Jandu and Amrutanjan smell very hard because they genuinely go into your skin.
Right.
He said Move should be slightly more creamy and should smell nice. So that was one. And he added a cooling agent to it. So that was the insight there. Second thing is he identified cracks in your feet as a market. यार. I could not imagine कि ये market हो सकता है. Crack बनाया उन्होंने. And then he built out Winnie with fog and all of this. Where again the insight, people think कि consumer businesses बनाने के लिए you have to be like कुछ rocket science innovation चाहिए. He said कि यार deodorant में 1000 brands थे. अभी भी है. Park Avenue, Axe, everyone, Kama Sutra, Nike, every Nivea, everyone makes a deodorant. वो तो easy product है बनाने के लिए, high gross margin. And consumer is flirty. तो तुम 2-3% share लेके तुम आराम से धंधा चला सकते हो अगर you can build a 100 crore business. He said नहीं यार, we should figure out what's the insight. Insight was कि Indians don't like to waste. और जब deodorant use करता है लोग, and I've heard stories, I don't know if it's true, I've never met the human being, but I kind of respect him from a distance. People say he used to stand at Panwadis because Panwadis are the largest distribution centers for deodorants. And वहाँ पे he would like talk to people about why are you choosing this brand, why are you buying this, ये महंगा है लेकिन क्यों खरीद रहे हो? बोलता नहीं ये महंगा है लेकिन ये जब मैं दबाता हूँ तो मेरे को लगता है कि बहुत ज़्यादा आ रहा है, तो I just do मैं पूरा ऐसे स्प्रे नहीं करता जैसे ऐड में दिखाते हैं. He like अच्छा ये consumer is a saving consumer, value consumer. So how many sprays can I get out? स्प्रे करना है तो गैस की जरूरत ही नहीं है. ये पूरा जो इनोवेशन है उस डिस्पेंसर में तो जरूरत ही नहीं है. पानी डालो और फ्रेग्रेंस की तरह यूज करो जैसे अपन कॉलिन यूज करते हैं. इट्स लिटरली दैट. इट्स अ परफ्यूम थ्रू वाटर. एंड ही सेड नो गैस, save 1000 sprays. Fog took 30% share over 5-6 years. What people don't realize is Darshan Bhai also had a fair share of failures. Like a lot of things he launched didn't work. But for him to have built this out amazingly is. No, but tell me about the journey we spoke about. Starting up, raising money off, off a, as you call it, a bad presentation. I'm sure it was not, but a deck with two seasoned entrepreneurs, to a honeymoon 4 years, to COVID, to then shrinking to the core, learning through that, and then how did the Tata conversation happen? Was it something you were actively looking for? Was it the investors reaching out? Was it Tata Group wanting to figure out how Tata Digital is going to kind of morph? How did that happen? Because even for someone like me outside, and I'm very curious to know how those boardroom discussions happen. So run us through that in as much detail as you possibly can.
Right. I think so. First and foremost, we have to see growing up in India. Tata is one brand name that we all have very deep respect for, because Tata's I think you almost look at the organization as something beyond just building business. They've been involved in nation building. Like they've been pioneers of building so many first, steel mills in the country, first airline in the country, so many first to their credit, right? So I think there is almost a halo around the Tata Group, right? That and rightly so, right? The organization has lasted 150 years. The foundation runs very, very deep. Extremely professionally run and so on. So I think that was always there. Sometime in the pandemic, period. We were going through a tough period, and we were reaching out to various people, investors, Indian houses, etc. I think that is what led to, initial outreach to Tata Group. But as we started, talking about, participation in cure.fit investment, I think we started also talking about the digital ambition that the group had and were actively working on. It was super inspiring, right? and given work I have done in my past life, I feel like I've been part of Indian retail ecosystem, digital retail ecosystem at least from day one.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of context which I think was relevant. So we started exchanging notes and inputs on what I felt as possible, not possible, and so on. Around the same time, the group was kind of doubling down on the digital strategy with 1mg acquisition and big basket acquisition, right? So I could see the emergence of potentially very powerful play, because and something I learned more in conversation with the group, that there are incredible consumer assets in the group. You have Titan and Tanishq, you have Westside and Zudio, you had 3 airlines now. One is merged with the AirAsia is merged, so 2 airlines. Taj group of hotels, one of the most iconic brands in the world. There's a whole Tata consumer products. We don't know that Zara and Starbucks are a 50-50 JV with Tata, and so on, right? So when you put it all together, you look at the group has, one is Tata is by far the most trusted. I think the brand equity, I don't know, but it's probably next 10 brands put together.
Correct.
That deep is the brand
Correct.
equity. You have all these consumer assets, all these customers not only trust you but transact with you on a daily basis. So I think that was the thesis behind Tata Digital. In our conversation, things so evolved that I was asked if I can contribute in some ways in helping shape the strategy and journey.
And who was this Tata Consumer? Was it Tata Sons? Was this?
I think so. There's a Tata Digital was set up as a subsidiary of Tata Sons.
Okay.
So, and there is a whole team. There was a team that existed even before I joined. That team has been at it, for 2+ years before that. Most of the platform was already built, by the time I joined. And I think I was able to contribute to some, helping shape the strategy, and also build a management team. So I was deeply involved in hiring of a lot of individuals. Many of them do come from the digital ecosystem that we have been part of, and I think they are, I now deeply integrated. But so I think it's probably my most accelerated 2 years of learning. There's so much more to learn from Tata Group. I think that's perhaps a topic of full episode some other time in future. I think every single of us in the business world can learn deeply about culture, values, strategy, long-term game, governance, and on, right? But so for me, I think it was that very deep front row view into what makes such a large conglomerate to continue to innovate, and continue to dominate, not in old industries but also new industries, right? So that was phenomenal. In the end, it turned out to be, it's a Bombay-based setup. I'm Bangalore-based, I was commuting way too much. At some point, I was not able to really manage, and it's, I think, ultimately, I had to accept that, that's in that setup, just either I move permanently to Mumbai or not, which I was really not willing to or not able to also. So had to make the hard decision of slowly stepping away from the operations and staying as a well-wisher, friend, advisor, wherever needed. So I think that's where I'm at now.
But was it easy to sell? Was it easy to sell cure.fit or the fitness business when COVID was kind of going away and you were saying, okay, people are going to start moving back into cities?
The group came in as an investor, so they have a minority position along with many other investors.
Okay.
So it was not an acquisition or sale conversation.
Okay.
I think we are very proud that Tata Group is a shareholder in the company. I think they bring enormous credibility and wealth of knowledge, not only in consumer business otherwise. So that way, the outstanding partner.
Okay.
But it was not a sale conversation.
But it became one later.
No.
Even now,
they are minority shareholders today.
Okay, but I think the perception was that it was acquired.
I think in India, media report.
For me also, I thought that it was sold to the Tata Group.
Because you would have seen some news, etc., and how the media would have positioned things. No. cure.fit is very much a independent company, owned by
really?
promoters and.
I thought it is rolled up into the Tata Group.
No, it's a very valuable partnership, but not a subsidiary of the group.
Oh wow! And now that you are stepping away, like the leadership team, CEO, etc., like this is all set for it to now run like a professionally independent setup.
It was even before I joined, right? There is a lot of management team at Tata group stays under the radar, so you don't hear from them. But there are a lot of people who've been both in the part of Tata ecosystem for a very long period of time, as well as a lot of new people who have joined from digital ecosystem, from places like Flipkart and Swiggy and Myntra and so on. So I think very, very strong management team.
Yeah.
And going through, I think its own, there obviously it's a startup at the end of the day, and startup go through their own learnings, their own product market fit. So I think that journey is unfolding, but I am super optimistic about what to expect.
Amazing. Now I wanted to kind of put the lens onto Mukesh, who came back as as a young 32-year-old, having lived in the US for working in startups. You obviously you come from tremendous, you IIT Kanpur, computer science, all of that, right? So you and this is the post-liberalization India.
Right.
So you had that starry-eyed dreams. But what brought you back to India in 2007 of all times when things were like kind of booming? This is
so I think in my
GFC,
mind,
right?
I think my first attempt at starting a company was way back in '99, and I literally quit my job in Chicago, drove to Silicon Valley, stayed with friends, and tried to start a company. Yeah, for basically requested somebody to let me live out of their couch, and try to start a company. But few months into it, I realized, I'm absolutely clueless. Me and my co-founder at that time, we really have no idea what we are doing.
What were you trying to do?
We were trying to build this, basically, I think now we can call it a portal for, hiring a freelancer.
Okay.
So I think it was this whole, idea was probably ahead of its time, also quite immature and so on. But, internet happening, and we felt like, why do people need to work full time? Why can't, people just work part time on, just work 4 hours a week or 10 hours a week, whatever they want, and match employers and, people who want to sell their time, and, skill match and control for quality and so on. But I think there's a too complex a problem with too tiny a brain, I think, at that time, it's absolute,
But you saw the gig economy 25 years before it actually happened.
I can claim that way, but, I think, I know, the truth was absolute cluelessness about, what you are not trying to talk about. But so I was clear from that time. I ended up working a bunch of startups in Silicon Valley and so on. But in some ways I was, biding my time and waiting for the right time, and also, building skill set and confidence, and some also bank balance, so that, I can take few years off and do something well. So I was good. The fact that I was going to start was never a question. It was a matter of, matter of time. And I assumed that I'm going to start in Silicon Valley because that's where, I was building my career. But it so happened my last two startups both had development centers in Bangalore. So from 2003 onwards, I started coming to Bangalore very often, to interact with, I was in product management, to work with the engineering team, etc. And I could see a lot of excitement in the air. Those were also days of India shining and all of that, right?
Correct.
Which also, did its job in, at least, I don't know, it probably didn't work that well in India, but it marketed to, NRIs and foreigners very well.
Correct.
Which, so I was sold on the India story that India is in the cusp of taking off. There is, what we witnessed in Silicon Valley in the late 90s is going to happen in India in the late 2000s onwards, right? So I think with that conviction, I decided to move back, 2007 I was ready to start up, and then I just felt somehow I had a gut feeling that starting India will be in some ways more easier and better. And second, also in my all those multiple visits to India, 2003 to 2007, I also felt very much at home, which I didn't realize. Every time when I come here, I feel like ये अपना देश है, वो जाके सड़क पे नुक्कड़ पे चाय पीना, and all of that. In US, I always felt an alien, very well adjusted, but still an alien,
Yeah, it doesn't feel like your own place,
yeah,
right?
it just doesn't, right? So for
and
me,
India trips would be Haridwar, or
no,
Bangalore?
it is only Bangalore,
Okay.
There's very rarely I'll go to Haridwar, and my parents also know. Very soon after me moving back to Bangalore, move back to Bangalore. So, but those were mostly Bangalore trips. I'll come here for a week, spend time, stay near the Forum Mall, and just place was buzzing. There's palpable excitement in Bangalore. So I think that, and then a little bit, just being back to more comfortable setting. What I didn't realize at the time, India was ready to take off, but does not mean it's going to take off tomorrow. It took many years, and that which translated into very slow, patient journey with multiple pivots, etc. over 4 years.
What was Myntra's first idea? Like, I'm sure it was very different from what Myntra became.
It was very different. Yeah, we were selling personalized products online, and our inspiration was there were two companies in Silicon Valley at the time were doing very well. One was Cafe Press, other was Jazzle.
Okay.
And the idea was you can basically order anything personalized online. So, T-shirt with your name or your, selected design on the front, or personalized greeting cards or calendars and things like that. So we started with that. The thing was, 2007. First of all, there's nobody on internet. There are hardly 4 or 5 million people on the internet. On top of that, we are in a very niche category, which you will need only for a gifting occasion, for self-expression every once in a while. So it was a niche market, niche category. Not much was going to happen anyway. So we tried that. I think we got some early adoption, etc. But got stuck at certain scale. And
क्या scale था वो by the way? The early
I have to really
first ceiling
jog my memory, but probably we reached something like 30-40 lakhs a month. So,
okay, that's a lot in 2008, 9, 10. That's a lot of money.
Lot, yeah, but obviously aspirations were very different.
Correct.
In 2008, we raised our series A of $5 million and so on, right?
Oh,
so,
wow, okay.
Right.
Who wrote that check?
So Axel, all these guys, Axel, Chirate and Kalari, they came together.
Okay.
And it was also, venture capital also starting to take off. I think now they're all close friends. Now they tell me like basically they had no idea what I was building. They also didn't believe in, but they thought that me and the team, had something. And their thesis was, hey, look, kuch figure out kar lenge. So invest kar dete, right? So that was the thesis.
And that time exchange rate was 50 rupees, but this is 25 crore types.
Exactly right, around 50 rupees. Yeah, so looks like you've been tracking exchange rate very carefully.
I'll tell you who was telling me. Rohit was telling me. The Snapdeal series also happened around the same time.
That's right.
So तब मैंने मैथ किया था उन्होंने बोला नहीं गलत है 70 नहीं 50 था.
That's right. Correct.
I remember.
Exactly right, yeah. Wow, yeah, rupee has come a long way in the wrong direction since then. Yeah, so that's that's how I ended up in Bangalore for 2007, and those 4 years were quite tough. I mean, many ways quite tough, but also again, when things are difficult, you jog your brain more, right, and you try harder and make bolder decisions. So, as in retrospect, incredible. Those 4 years, we learned a tons about Indian consumer, digital marketing, building online platforms, and so on. And after meandering and trying various things, somehow we ended up in the right category of fashion in 2011. Around the time the mobile internet was taking off, and finally we were at the right place, right time, and go with the rocket ship.
We actually, I remember 2009, 9 and 10 were when I was at IIM Lucknow.
Right.
हमारे जो sweatshirts बने थे
correct.
IIM Lucknow के वो Myntra से बने थे. I think you guys got the Puma sweatshirt.
That's right.
हमने बोला था हमारा logo पीछे चाहिए और हमारा
So that was one of many pivots. At some point realized कि we can do bulk deals की personalization one करता है तो college में हर festival में personalized t-shirt लोगो मिलती है.
Correct.
So we put that together, corporate gifting, retail kiosk, you name it. I think 4 साल में बहुत चीज ट्राई की थी.
Amazing. And then 11, where did you start seeing, okay, fine, this is where PMF is really starting to scale. Where was the S-curve for you?
I think PMF came little later, but initially, one is by 2010 onwards, we started working with these brands like Puma, Adidas, Nike, etc. primarily to personalize their IPL team jerseys. And then 2011, if you remember, World Cup happened, so Nike had a massive campaign, and we partnered with them to create this personalized Team India jerseys. So that build a relationship with the brands, and the jersey was selling really well. And then we started thinking, यार ये jersey is only one SKU out of their entire portfolio. वो इतना बिक रहा है तो इनका पूरा portfolio platform पे होगा तो we can do incredibly more sales. So that was one. We also by the time
so you got entire Nike portfolio on to Myntra.
We got an उसका भी additional trigger came from it. In 2010 we were experimenting these kiosks. So because of those kiosks, I used to go to a lot of these malls. And one of the mall in Pune, I was just walking around. It was probably summer month, Thursday afternoon. There's not a single person in the mall, and suddenly it dawned on me that every floor is only apparel, footwear, accessories. Or there's supposedly a mall, but maybe there's one bookstore on third floor, maybe one electronics store on second floor, but hundreds of shops all selling apparel, footwear, accessories, and not a single. I was the only customer in the whole mall. I was like, okay, this is a major mismatch. इतना सारा inventory यहाँ waste हो रहा है, ग्राहक यहाँ पे कोई है नहीं. हम ऑनलाइन बिजनेस में हैं and online anyone can shop from home, office, etc. Right? So why are we not marrying the two? And by the time Nike, Reebok relationship was in place, so like few of these factors kind of collided for us to, I think, maybe see something which should have been very obvious, but at some point it became quite obvious, and then we started running a breakneck speed. Now we need to get all this catalog on board, not only Nike, Puma, Reebok, but other brands and so on. So we added category. At some point, I mean, the numbers just started to take off. We had periods where our sales will literally double every month and so on, and we were like, समझ में नहीं आ रही क्या हो रहा है, कैसे हो रहा है, पर अच्छा हो रहा है जो भी हो रहा है, right? And that's And we had this intense growth period, I think, from pretty much from 2011 till 2014. Through this Flipkart acquisition.
People don't realize, but 2011 is still very early.
Right.
2011 maybe, I remember being on an E63.
Right.
So phone I'm assuming even in 11, 12,
right.
phone shopping would not have been as much as...
Phone shopping started to happen. It was not... A lot of people started browsing, so a lot of traffic. I think 2011 or 12 is where I think the percentage traffic from mobile phone exceeded percentage traffic from desktop. That does not mean the sales on mobile phone, but the traffic, because most people in India never ever bought laptop. Their first, interaction with the internet happened through mobile phone. Because mobile phone तो ऐसे भी चाहिए था, और internet में साथ में addition आ रहा है. So that's how large majority of people in the country understood, or became connected.
Yeah, but 2013, 2012, 2013, you're right. I think that's when the first, I remember Xiaomi, OnePlus had started coming in.
Flipkart launched Xiaomi in 2014. The first time, Xiaomi came to the country, and a lot of things happened in the... There was no WhatsApp. WhatsApp came to India in 2013-14.
Correct.
Today, can't imagine life without WhatsApp, right? So
people don't realize 2011 seems recentish.
Right.
But we did not have Uber, Ola, at least not at scale.
Ola was just starting out. I remember meeting Bhavish in his early days. He was telling me story of his parents was asking, तुम्हें टैक्सी कंपनी चलानी थी तो आईटी क्यों गए? So on, right? From there to reinventing EVs, I think he has come a long way.
Come a long way, no, absolutely. And how did the tell me a little bit about, and I think you can kind of marry your two entrepreneurial journeys. But we spoke a lot at that day at the ELD also about culture and philosophy of like people, right?
Correct.
Building leadership. Co-founders,
right?
But like Ankit, I know, but I don't know. For example, in Myntra, who like I've not met your initial team there. But talk a little bit about how did you build a team,
right?
And then as you started scaling and the company became large, how did you get senior talent to come and join you?
So this is so I spent 8 years in Silicon Valley. There also I worked for 4 different very early stage startups, and I would say one was reasonably successful. One was moderately successful or barely successful, and 2 died, right? And I learned a lot of things. I think 2 core things I inherited from my Silicon Valley experience, which I think gave me some advantage in the things I've done, and also certain perspective and way of doing things. One is obsessive focus on building a unique culture. I think culture is what holds the company together. Eventually, culture becomes a silent driving force behind how everybody makes decisions. Right, and the whole, Peter Drucker's quote about, culture eating strategy for breakfast.
Correct.
And I think, what gives Silicon Valley its edge is really, that the culture which is equality based, meritocracy based, transparency based, it doesn't matter. You could be 25-year-old and CEO of a company, and, it's just all about power of ideas and what you bring to a table, right?
Correct.
So I think I've tried to, in both my companies, try to build a unique culture. I think there's a lot of acknowledgement also now. People see both Myntra and cure.fit somewhat different than a standard, company you will see in the country. Second, an obsession about product. Like Silicon Valley companies, don't market their products. Like वो फंडा सिंपल है कि प्रोडक्ट इतना अच्छा 10x better होना चाहिए. प्रोडक्ट अच्छा है तो word of mouth will happen on its own.
Correct.
At some point, they will think of growth hack, etc. Right? So I think, in Myntra, we wanted to make online shopping experience so delightful. And it did. Fashion shopping became so good in Myntra that it became entertainment for people. Like most people, won't come to Myntra to shop. They will just come to browse. Because browse में मजा आता है. It's like an entertainment. You have nice looking models, nice clothes. वो browse करते रहो, right? It's a voyeuristic pleasure almost. Or window shopping, right? Which is a well-known thing in fashion world, right? Similarly, cult. We try to make the ambience experience so good that मजा आ जाए कि once you leave at the end of 50-minute class की basically you say कि यार मजा आ गया. And then you will tell 5 other people कि बस cult जाओ वहाँ पे मजा आता है. Dance class में ये होता है, boxing में ये होता है, right? So I think those 2 things, I think I've been able to do somewhat justice to in building the companies, like really building a very strong foundation and observing a product. You earlier asked me how were first 6 months of cult like. In addition to understand domain, we used to have so many debates about what should be our org constitution, what is our purpose, what is our core values, what are the beliefs and policies. And a lot of people product कब बनाओगे तुम ये सब फालतू की चीजें बता रहे हो, like very mumbo jumbo. But I think both Ankit and I believe that it's very critical, and I think we have a formal org constitution which documents which is evolved over a period of time, and that's become like if the countries have constitution, why not company?
Correct.
They should also have, right? So I think these are a couple of things which I think I try to do, obsess about in my entrepreneurial journey.
No, I completely. I think obsession with product specifically is far easier to talk about. It obviously sounds right. Very hard to do.
Right.
It is extremely hard to do, and it is extremely hard to inculcate in 20 other people.
That's
Like, even if you are a product detail, and it's always about bottom-up details, stuff that doesn't seem important. I cannot even. I'm still thinking hard about 2011, 2012 when the mobile screen was not sure.
Correct.
Programming was. Tech teams have today evolved into very functional, like oiled machines.
Right.
At that time, I don't know how you would have built out a desktop plus phone tech team with the talent available to be able to service. Also, for example, zero defect product हम लोग बोलते हैं. Like Rahul was speaking about a zero defect product that day. In the fashion space where consumer is finicky.
Right.
So there are tech product also, there is a physical product also, then there is the marriage of quality, then there is experience, and in an environment where the consumption environment itself is so unique.
Right.
It's very hard to manage all these variables, no?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think when you're in the game and you're trying to play to win and you're on your toes every single day, right? I think the way I recall those things, some of the things that are coming out in that transition period from 2011 to 2015. One is I remember 2012. I went to US for a trip and I picked up this book called Mobile Wave. I think Michael Saylor, who was the MicroStrategy, right, a CEO, a founder, and it was a kind of eye opener for me. Now I could have stopped at that कि यार चलो mobile web से world transform होगा. I read the book early and all, but what I did was I bought a copy of book for all 300 employees of Myntra, and we distributed, we gave a talk, and we said, like, boss, this is going to change everything. This is a time for us to like really double down and become mobile first company. So that was one big event. Second is when I went to Flipkart, Sachin there was even more obsessed about mobile than me. And he was here desktop se bakwas hai, mobile bhi sab kuch hona chahiye. So both of us brainstorm a lot, and then he came up with this idea ki desktop band hi kar dete hain. We'll be mobile only company.
I remember that.
Yeah. So we debated a lot, and we said ki yaar ye, but could also be very risky. So we were in some ways kind of co-running both Flipkart and Myntra. We said, okay, chalo, Myntra ka scale is 1/10 of Flipkart. अगर करना है तो Myntra से चालू करते हैं, because even if we lose 30% desktop revenue, that is only 3% of overall revenue. तो मैनेज हो जाएगा, मतलब उसमें बड़ी बात नहीं, but so Myntra went ahead and shut down the desktop site because people ये पागल हो गए क्या कर रहे हैं, right? And so it did two things. One is it obviously forced the company to become mobile first.
Correct.
It literally like Alexander burning the bridges, right? You can't go back to win the war. Correct. So I think Myntra became obsessively good at mobile.
Correct.
At some point, Myntra also realized that there are some customers for them the larger screen form factor is very important. They will not shop. And those customers were not shifting to mobile phone.
Correct.
No matter how good we are becoming at that.
Correct.
And eventually Myntra brought back desktop, which was a right thing to do.
Correct.
But by the time it was very much a truly mobile first company, probably only at least in 2015-16.
Correct.
So I think it's interesting that somehow we had the courage and guts and investor support to be able to do such bold gutsy moves.
But talk about people, like from the 4 startups you worked at, did you derive mentorship from those founders or your bosses? Because those must have been formative years for you, right?
It was, I think, more mentorship by assimilation and observation. So I didn't have formal mentorship model. I think in the most startups, everyone's only obsession about surviving. And if you're surviving, then winning, right? किसी का time नहीं है कि किसी को mentor वगैरह करना है, right? So I think, but lot of you see all these dynamics play out in front. You talk to people, you pick up things on water cooler conversation. Right, and generally, I think fortunately, I guess what eventually made me an entrepreneur is that I had the able to take initiative. मेरे को I think कुछ लग रहा है कि ठीक है, तो I would just write it up, create a proposal, and go to anybody in the company कि boss, I think this is how we should think. Sometimes they'll agree, sometimes they'll disagree. But I had a lot of really inside view on a lot of things, and I was even though a relatively junior member of the team, but I was able to converse with anyone. So a lot of just observation, self-learning, but probably unfortunately no formal mentorship.
But did you change that when you came to India, started Myntra, became a founder yourself? And
I think I think my journey spanned out. I haven't had a long-term mentor relationship, but what I've had is very deep collaboration and relationship equal. So with my Myntra co-founders early on.
Who were they? Talk about them a little bit.
So Ashutosh, actually the Myntra founding team got built over 9-month period.
Okay.
So 4 different people joined different journey, and we agreed, and we are all taking in some way equal amount of risk and all in, So we all basically ended up with 5 co-founders.
Oh, really? Okay.
So Ashutosh and Vineet were my junior from IIT Kanpur, and a little later 2 other guys, Ravin Shastri, he is now an investor, he runs multiples, and Shankar Bora, he is founded Dealshare. So this became the initial founding team of Myntra, and all of us were together for 4 years. The other 3 people, for different reasons, as we are pivoting to fashion, etc., moved on. Ashutosh stayed in the company till the actually longer than me. I moved on in 2016. He moved on, I think, 2018.
Okay, from
Flipkart.
Flipkart.
Started M-Fine. So, this was the initial team.
Wow. And at what point did you feel that, okay, this is a company that is going to get acquired for, or like, how did Sachin, Vinny, was it Axel? Like, what happened there?
I think, so in 2013, what happened in both Flipkart and Myntra, we've been raising money from same investors, Axel first and then Tiger Global, right?
Correct.
And so we had a lot of cap table already common. And and we are kind of, both companies started around 2007. So I've known these guys. We would interact every now and then, exchange notes and so on. 2013, Amazon started making, big announcement about, India. And we could see all the signs that they're very serious, obviously a very formidable company.
Correct.
And I think we started talking, with the intent of, can Myntra, Flipkart together be much stronger competitor to Amazon versus being an independent organization. Investors also thought so. They also felt that are able to raise capital, go up significantly. Flipkart was doing incredibly well in electronics, but not so much in fashion.
Correct.
Myntra was very strong in fashion. Electronic fashion were the 2 largest category in commerce. Still are.
Still are. Correct.
Both together about 80% of online commerce.
Correct.
Right? Probably even more. So I think the strategic rationale for that was strong. I think there also mutual respect, among the founders on both sides. And we also spent a lot of time. I think it was slow dating over 1 year. We're getting to know each other.
3 of you, was it like you, Ashutosh, and Sachin, Benny, or
That's
was
right,
it?
Yeah. Well, pretty much, 4 of us.
Talk about those conversations a little bit, like, because you have spoken about your acquisitive conversations in the context of cult.fit, but this was an iconic, kind of watershed moment, right?
I think what happened early on, the mutual respect developed on 2 angles. I think we really admired Flipkart for their scale and ambition. Every time we'll talk to Benny and Sachin, for everything, Flipkart was 10 times bigger than Myntra. And for us it was mind-boggling, when we talk about 100 crore, it's 1000 crore bolte hain, hum 500 bolte hain, wo 5000 crore bolte hain, and and they were also starting to pioneer with the this flash sale format with Xiaomi sales and so on, right? So we felt Flipkart really understands scale really well. On the other hand, Flipkart and this, Myntra people, they really understand culture really well.
Correct.
Like we सारे time culture की बात करते रहते हैं, right? And the experience they've created for consumer, that Flipkart is just not able to replicate. No matter what they do in fashion, it just won't come anywhere close to that, right?
Correct.
So they had, so I think the foundation of the relationship was based on respect.
Mutual respect.
Right. We also in our conversation will talk about all the sticky issues upfront. Company कौन चलाएगा बाद में, like मेरा रोल क्या होगा, right? आशुतोष का रोल क्या होगा, right? Myntra में कितनी इंडिपेंडेंस
आपने पूछा है डायरेक्टली या उन्होंने
all this because see, in some ways I was first time entrepreneur, but I've been around entrepreneurship for 15 years.
Correct.
I have seen companies live, die, merge, acquire, everything, right?
Correct.
So I think obvious question पता थे, and these guys also were very straightforward, straight shooter, right? So वो सब we clearly got it out of the way very quickly. Entire deal was stitched together between the founders.
Oh really?
Almost no involvement from the investors, and whatever we agree on, we'll get their counsel and sound it off. But pretty much I think it was very deep conviction at the end of both sides. It was a those partnerships that we're saying together we'll make something much bigger, and we genuinely believe that. And if you look at retrospect, it's exactly how panned out.
Yeah.
I think now fast forward 9 years since the transaction happened, Flipkart is still the largest player. Yeah. Amazon is probably 70% the size of Flipkart. Myntra is the now largest fashion retail in the country, online or offline, right?
Yeah.
So I think, it was a good marriage of complementary skills and designing the acquisition right. I think we did a lot of really good decisions on day one, which allowed us to have not be on each other's throat, but letting each other thrive and focus on synergies.
You headed the entire thing as an acquired CEO, right?
Yeah, my role evolved significantly. On day one, I started by heading both Myntra and the fashion category at Flipkart. And within 6 months, I was running all the categories. And then we had a reshuffle. We created something called Commerce Platform, which was all of e-commerce business. So I was managing that for 1
And
year.
you had put logistics aside.
So
Logistics
at that time we restructured the business as commerce, ads was a new business we want to incubate, and logistics.
Correct.
So those were three, right? And I mean the org structure kept evolving Flipkart, but during my time, this was set up.
I mean, like, how was that to go from a company that was doing personalized sweatshirts for colleges to riding a 2-3 year wave to then getting acquired and then running the whale?
No, it was. I think it two things. One is it really forced me to be continuously be out of my comfort zone.
Clearly,
and I was forced to learn. Right. I think as I joined Flipkart, I was obviously enamored by the scale. But at some point I realized that, the scale is growing at a faster pace than the team is. And we really needed to, bring a lot more talent from outside. So most of my time Flipkart actually went into, recruitment. I got a lot of people from Silicon Valley, a lot of people from, top companies in India and so on. Perhaps in retrospect, did it too fast and there is a way to bring in senior leaders, etc. And I shouldn't have. But, it's just that, we are raising billions of dollars, scale was growing, become unmanageable. So in some that I think there was a error of judgment. But I was, what's fascinating about it, I was outside my comfort zone, but I was also feeling comfortable being outside my comfort zone. So, for me, it was, similar to what happened in my Tata journey, right? It was a very accelerated learning period.
Correct.
Like it wouldn't have happened in Myntra journey, right? So in some ways, now I'm product of, those journeys and, being fortunate to be part of platforms like Flipkart and Tata Digital, right? Where is a very, very different perspective. So yeah, very grateful and fortunate to be able to have had those experiences.
What gave you the most sleepless nights at Myntra? Was it the early days? Was it the acquisition frenzy? Was it
like to say nothing gives me sleepless nights because I believe in health so strongly.
Nothing should
and sleep is the foundational habit for so I really don't. In fact, in between, I think because of my time zone changes, etc., at some point I had a really bad bout of insomnia, and I've actually talked about in my recent book on health as well.
Correct.
But other than that, I think work does not give. I think I have a way of winding down. Whenever I stop my work, which these days is usually around 7 p.m., I'll have spend some time with my kids and read, listen to some podcasts, etc., meditate, do something, like almost there is I follow this guy Cal Newport.
Correct.
And he has written a lot of books on productivity, etc. He has some kind of closing ritual. Basically, the way it goes is at some point in the day, you say, I am done. It's almost like mini resignation. कि अगर आप बॉम्बे शेविंग कंपनी चलाते हो 8 बजे बोलोगे मैं रिजाइन कर रहा हूँ अगले 12 घंटे के लिए. अब ये मेरी कंपनी नहीं है, मेरे को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. लाइक मी शांतनु इज मोर देन bigger than Bombay shaving company. मेरी और भी life है. So like that, I have a similar wind down ritual. I just so I don't think work issues. I'm sure there have been one or two occasional situations, but by and large I really don't remember losing sleep.
But the toughest, what was the toughest time? I think COVID was for cult, I'm sure.
See, COVID was tough in the sense that it was
external.
Yeah, it was, we had to problem solve deeply, but because of the question of the enough money, it was not an existential risk for us. I think the toughest has been 2013. At some point, Myntra came very close to dying. I mean, literally.
In 2013 of all
2013, yeah. So 2013, what happened is, it's very funny that till 2013, there we made a lot of mistakes or wrong timing, this, that. Finally, in 2012 and 13, things started to fall in place. We were really firing all cylinders. We were growing, margins were improving, brand was getting built. But 2013 turned out to be a really bad macro year for India. It was one of those business cycles, which for Indian context, hit the trough because the government was going to change in 2014.
Correct.
There were a lot of corruption scandals. All the foreign, investors, got spooked here. पता नहीं इंडिया में क्या चल रहा है, करना चाहिए कि नहीं करना चाहिए. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So all funding dried up, and we were like, अब तो सब कुछ ठीक कर रहे हैं. And we spent tough 9 months trying to fundraise. I kid you not, I think we basically got no from everybody, right?
What are you saying?
Now a lot of these people are friends, so I will not take any names. But every single VC basically told us few things. Ki either we are not investing right now, or wait for 1 year, or let's wait until profit is better, or let's see what Flipkart does, or let's wait what Amazon does. Just all the reasons, but not investing. And
how much were you burning on a monthly or yearly basis?
I think our burn at peak was maybe 1.5 million. And we went through a month. We went through series of cost cutting. We probably brought it down to half of that level. But ultimately, we still had few $1 million in bank. So even that money started dwindling. And I still remember in November 2013, we didn't even have money for 1 month. And I remember sitting in a conference room with my CFO Prabhakar around 7 days before the month end ki ab kya kare, like now we are really on the brink, right? And we are obviously making a lot of frenetic calls to all kind of people, and then one of our key investor, Lee Fixel from Tiger Global, has been a good supporter. So we were trying to make an internal bridge round happen, but it was not coming together. People were not able to agree on terms. So I called Lee saying, Lee, if we do something now or we'll basically fold, can you his share of bridge funding was 5 million. So I asked him, Lee, can you I don't think we can get the paperwork done. There are too many lawyers involved, too much happening. Can you just wire the money? And somehow, to his credit, he agreed. He said, I'll do it tomorrow.
What are you saying?
And he wired the money next day. And we suddenly had a breather for 3-4 months. And a lot of good things happened. We closed our bridge round. In 3 months down the line, we closed the Premji round with $50 million. And the 3 months, we closed the Flipkart deal. But we were like really staring down the barrel for a few weeks.
That is insane.
It's quite insane.
That is absolutely insane. Tell me about if you were to have done anything differently in the Myntra or cure.fit journey, what would that have been? Is there something you feel कि यार ये कुछ अलग करना चाहिए था या फिर this decision was kind of the wrong one?
I think let's do the recent first. I think cure.fit में I definitely would have 2 things. One is I would have thought about TAM very differently.
Yeah.
And I would have been much wiser about it on day one. Second thing, our ambition.
क्या सोचा था आपने कि हम
हमें तो मार्केट क्रिएट कर लेंगे. थोड़ा सा वो नाइव वाला होता है ना, वो एज ए एंटरप्रेन्योर समटाइम यू गेट टू एरोगेंट कि लगता है कि यार सबको फिटनेस सिखा देंगे. Markets don't grow like that, right? See, this is I see, even though I have made this mistake and learned from it, a lot of entrepreneurs talk about market. जैसे मेंटल हेल्थ की हम लोग बात करें कि इंडिया में कुछ भी नंबर पकड़ लो, 100 मिलियन लोग को मेंटल हेल्थ की प्रॉब्लम है. एवरीबडी कैन स्पेंड $100, तो 100 into 100 10 बिलियन का मार्केट बन गया. बट दैट्स नॉट अ मार्केट, राइट? मार्केट 100 में आज की तारीख में मे बी 100,000 पीपल पे. हाउ मच दे पे? $50. तो 100,000 into 50 is $5 million. तो आपका आज की मार्केट $5 million का है, लाइक 10 बिलियन का नहीं है, राइट? सो इट्स लाइक लुकिंग अ मार्केट की लाइक टुडे आई नो फिटनेस में 5 मिलियन लोग हैं. दे ऑन एवरेज स्पेंड अबाउट $150. तो $750 का रियल मार्केट है,
करेक्ट,
राइट? That's it. There may be 50 million people who are interested in fitness and all that. So I think some of these things were not clear.
Will be harder.
The second thing is, we just went after too many categories too fast without winning, one in a big way. I think those are 2 things I'll do differently. In case of Myntra, if I go back, I think in Myntra case, while we were very heavily focused on culture, I think the accountability metric was not very high. So in Myntra, in the first 5-6 years, easy for people to not carry their weight, but still stay in the company. I think it took us, some hard knocks to eventually figure out, you always need to have right person for the job, just because in a fast growth environment, people need to keep growing to retain, their role or take a smaller role, right? So I think that dynamic. Second, also just overall, how I think this overall deal intelligence, whether for our series round or Flipkart round, etc. I don't know, that's great. There are, we see all this, people snicker, when they look at all the term sheet, clauses, etc. So, काफी hypothetical लगते हैं. But having done this 15 hypothetical नहीं है. Everything plays out, right?
Correct.
What is the implication of, different rights you give to different investors, implications for, things like how do you negotiate right of first refusal or tag along or drag along and so on, right?
Correct.
So I think I'll probably think more deeply about those things.
Yeah, coming to the market size thing, Addy was in fact telling me right now something very counterintuitive. Yeah. So Reckitt's brands are Harpic, Lysol, Durex, Dettol, kind of iconic. And their largest brand, I don't know about today, but at some point the largest brand is a brand called Finish, which is dishwasher detergent, like cleaner in the dishwasher. And I'm like, that's surprising that's your largest brand globally. And then he said, Reckitt's operating model is find a market which doesn't exist, okay? Build a product and take 80% gross margin. कोई idea नहीं है pricing क्या होना चाहिए, कोई है ही नहीं उस market में.
What is the timeline view they take for that?
30 years.
Wow, incredible.
So they have 30 साल लगेंगे. Market पकड़ो, have conviction, do all the consumer research, उसे क्या ये market बनेगा.
Yeah.
हम बनाएंगे और हम प्राइस करेंगे, फिर जो आएगा वो हमारे प्राइस एंकर के ऊपर नीचे आएगा। तो देयर इज सो देन दे थिंक प्रॉफिट पूल फर्स्ट, कि प्रॉफिट पूल बन जाएगा उससे। अब मार्केट बनेगा नहीं बनेगा, एज एन एग्जांपल दो, बिकॉज़ आई कुड नॉट इवन इमेजिन व्हाट दिस
इज इनक्रेडिबल। आई थिंक दैट्स बीन probably one of single biggest learning for my entire entrepreneurial career, ability to take a really long view.
Correct.
And nowadays even 10 years is not long enough. So when you say 30 years, right, no, that's phenomenal. I think, if you look at anybody from Warren Buffett onwards, right, people who build, even the most cutting edge tech company in the world are the 50-year-old companies, Microsoft and Apple, right?
Correct.
So, having a long view allows you to do things that, people in the short term view, that's why Bezos keeps saying, right,
So
always day one and so on.
Correct.
So I think it took me far too long to realize.
Correct.
But maybe better late than never,
No, I agree.
Now I realize, and hopefully whatever I do, I will try to do with 10 to 20 year lens.
Yeah, but it's hard to do, right? Because what he said was, I told you example दो मेरे को, ये like हार्पिक देखो, टॉयलेट क्लीन करने के लिए फिनाइल और एसिड यूज होता था इंडिया में 1992 से पहले।
Right.
1992 Reckitt said, we will launch Harpic. It seems to be a successful product. Here is the price. Harpic is a premium, expensive product. Nothing like it existed. But bathroom साफ करना है, एसिड और फिनाइल निकालो, हार्पिक लगाओ। 15 करोड़ बाथरूम है इंडिया में, 15 करोड़ बाथरूम में हमारा हार्पिक होना चाहिए।
Right.
They built out a beautiful large brand.
Who is the mastermind behind that thinking?
I don't know. So I think Brett Bart is what he said, is what the operating, here's a 4-page operating model on how Reckitt builds brands. They, including like Durex or Lysol, Dettol. Dettol also, yeah, it's priced so much higher than Lifebuoy, but still has complete share of disinfection.
Of course.
So companies have very unique, like everyone has a very unique view, but I think having a long view requires a lot of courage. Like I personally, as a founder, I don't know. You 30-year view, I'm imagining myself at the age of 65 or 66.
Yeah.
I don't know like what my life is going to look like, I will look very different and so on, right? So,
but see, that also forces you to think beyond you.
Correct.
You start thinking about an institution building, right? Things like somewhere you have to, the company can live for, next 30 years or 100 years also, doesn't mean you have to run it, right?
Correct.
So I think versus, I need to run it, I need to make it happen, right? And maybe there's a phase where you need to do that. And some of the, I think, see, a few like deep insights I'm realizing is anyone who has built an iconic company, right? They've done it over 30, 40, 50 years. No one does it over 10 years. Second thing, value creation. In most companies, if it just 20-year life cycle, the 90% of value creation happens in the second decade of existence. I'm pretty sure if you look at the same thing, third decade will be probably equally, maybe if not 90%, at least 70, 80%, right? So the value creation is so much lopsided in the back end, and we unnecessarily obsess so much about first 10 years, right? कि मतलब उसमें सब कुछ करना है, valuation भी चाहिए, exit भी चाहिए, सब कुछ. I don't think that reflects, reality of how outstanding companies and products are built.
That is so true. That is so. Do you think founders, like, I'm not sure I have that view. Do you think like founders need to have that view?
Because no one talks about it, right? If you look at the entire venture ecosystem, the average holding period is maybe 7 years. So like from the date of investment, funds are set up as a 10-year plus some extension, etc., right? So a whole fund needs to be wound down. So I think those funds were designed for the there are these pure tech companies in Silicon Valley which can achieve incredible scale and list and give exit, but those are profitable companies, they list. Venture capitalists exist, but you can, Zuckerberg can keep building Facebook, right?
Correct.
Or Google guys can keep building Google forever, right? Which they are.
Correct.
Right? Which is decoupled. In our case, I think the only thing founders hear about that journey of build, scale, exit, all within that first 5 to 10 years, right?
Correct.
And that leads to so many short-term decision making, unnecessary panic and stress. I think this is, I want to, before preaching, I guess the most important thing is to incorporate. So I want to first rewire myself to be able to think 10-year increments and then do things I do, and hopefully maybe platform like yours and others eventually start talking about more and more also, because I think it's very important. It's just short term leads to a lot of value destruction. There is a need for hustle and survival and all that, but also like one eye needs to be what people call that both telescope and microscope simultaneously, right? Microscope for problem solving, but telescope from what you're trying to build.
You're right, longevity is so underrated. It is so underrated. And we don't no one has taught us to think that far ahead. Like we need to, and I'm glad you're speaking about it here because it's made me think, and I can see like the team also kind of think, actually, yes, you're right.
Everyone's committing for 10 years here.
Yeah, no, because think about it, like Colgate, for example. Right. Colgate is a 220-year-old organization. 220 years. For the first 75 years, they were not in oral care.
Right. Yeah, I'll give you more examples. Someone told me Lifebuoy started, I think, in the 19th century. Right? Similarly, TCS started in 1968.
Correct.
Right? It's today we are looking at a market cap, right?
Correct.
But these are all, institutions built, slowly over a very long period of time.
My father joined TCS in 1978.
Right.
Was there till 1993. So 15 years, first 15 years was Mr. Ramdurai was his boss.
Right.
FC Kohli was like the father figure there.
Right.
And every story my father tells me today about his corporate life is about TCS. I said, you've had a entrepreneurship, Tech Mahindra, sab aapne kiya. But TCS is where the heart lies because he said two things. One is he said that Mr. Kohli said we are building an internationally world-class organization out of India and we will never compromise on that.
Right.
And I thought that was for 1968, amazing. 1970 to think that. And second is they were truly global.
Right.
Right. So dad set up all the US offices. He talks about like, how do you get clients in the US and how do you get them to pay for you and all of that stuff. But I think those organizations, while they were under the umbrella of a conglomerate, were truly entrepreneurial.
Right.
Truly entrepreneurial. And I think today's entrepreneurs need to, including myself, I'm trying to saying it out loud, so to repeat it to myself, that if we don't have a long view on things, we will probably undersell 95 to 98% of the potential value just because of short term.
See, these days, there is so much attention, paid to some of the Indian internet companies went public and whatever listed at price X and maybe current price X by 2, and too much ink is spilled on that phenomena. But if you take a 10-year view, how does it matter? I mean, if Zomato continues to innovate, build a strong company, they can be from $4 billion to $20 billion company. Same for Paytm, etc. I think this obsession about month to month, quarter to quarter, I think absolutely unnecessary distraction and doesn't really mean much. I really hope all these companies are around 10-15 years from now and probably we can look at them.
But the thing now, Mukesh, is that Wall Street or any public market index, right? They will want quarter on quarter because their trading depends on it, short term wins depend on it. See, and then CEOs kind of do stupid
market
things.
Wants that, right? But if you look again, Amazon story, Jeff Bezos has done an incredible job teaching the market as well.
Yeah.
Don't look at short term profit. He has managed to invest every single dollar profit back into investment. And he has taught the market because he kept talking that language.
Correct.
So I think it's also what story you are telling. If I tell the story कि आप आज invest करो, अगले साल में double हो जाएगा, then I am myself positioning myself for that, right? So it's also, I think entrepreneurship is clear about what story you are going to market with, and people are investing in your company with what conviction and for what horizon.
Do you have as we kind of reach the twilight of this discussion, what is you talk about long-term view for institution building as a founder? Do you see like when I see young founders today, I'm impressed and extremely jealous of their capabilities, competence, awareness, and so on. Do you see that with younger founders who you invest in, you incubate, etc.? Do you feel like this is like a golden generation of founders that are going to build enterprise?
There's no question about it. I think the quality and caliber of entrepreneurship has just gone through the roof in last 5-6 years, and rightly so. I think India has always been, in fact, the hotbed of really top talent. We have all our institutions and filtering mechanism and training mechanism. It's just that entrepreneurship was perhaps seen too risky and too much off the beaten path before. No longer, because we have now many success stories, lot of venture capital is available, the entire support system is very mature and so on, and as a result a lot of these high caliber individuals are able to take the punt, as well as they are able to find a lot of role models and mentors, and this entire support system they can tap into, and which is creating this positive feedback loop of more quality entrepreneurs build better companies, building even more entrepreneurs. And other thing I didn't realize, but these companies themselves becomes a training ground for entrepreneurs. There are countless entrepreneurs have come out of Flipkart and Myntra and Ola and so on, right? I mean, I'm sure some people from Bombay Shipping Company must have already left. And
have you invested in GoQuick?
I have not.
So GoQuick founder was our
Right.
chief revenue officer.
Right.
That was such a
So this is subtle thing that we are doing while you're building your company. You're also training next generation of entrepreneurs
Correct.
within your company, right? So which is a part of whole ecosystem building. And I think given the how the deck is stacked, for India over next 25 years, the going from $3 trillion to $25 trillion economy, being very one of the brightest hotspots in the global economy, very young demographic. I mean, this is a time to build incredible businesses, no matter which category you pick, right? And it's great that this high caliber of entrepreneurs are coming into the system. And I think I can only imagine what the kind of solutions and will come out in the come near future.
Are you as excited today as you were in 2007?
Way more excited, 100 times more excited.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Our purpose, Mukesh, with the Barbershop is to talk to people like you who have so much to share, so that our viewers who are either in college or youngsters in their first or second jobs, to very senior people who have retired,
Right.
but have people retire at 60, 62, which was a fair age to retire maybe 30 years back.
Right.
But today a 62-year-old has a lot of fuel in the tank, a lot of energy, is mobile, on the internet.
Yeah.
So even they want to become founders, right? So our viewers are people who are thinking about becoming founders or are already founders and kind of wanting to learn. What would and the idea is that India needs to create 1 million jobs a month.
Right.
We are at 1/4 that number.
Right.
And a huge social issue could be if we are not able to employ those 750,000 Delta people.
Correct.
Like if that accumulates, we are
Right.
there'll be a huge spanner in the wheels of the
Right.
of the $25 trillion mark. So our job is like, if this conversation, even one person actually takes the leap.
Right.
कि मैं सोच रहा था,
Correct.
अब मैं करने वाला हूँ. मुकेश की वो बात सुनी मैंने, 20 साल वाला लॉन्ग व्यू है, ये करूँगा मैं.
Correct.
Right? And that's our success.
Right.
What would your parting thought be to this whole set of personas that I just spoke about from an entrepreneurship standpoint?
I think the key thing is, anyone listening to this podcast, if you have a genuine interest in entrepreneurship, I would say, you thoughtfully prepare for it. Preparation requires you to do few things, One is you need to give yourself runway. If I started, if I quit my job and start a company, but run out of money or support, family support in 12 months from now, my company will die irrespective of what happens. So create the runway, I would say minimum runway of, at least 3-4 years, because you need at least that much to go through few pivots, learn, develop some context. Second thing, have some practice to just try to understand who you are, because your own nature and your inclinations play a very big role in what kind of opportunities you will do better and not better. Are you a fast copy kind of guy? Are you a vision driven person? Do you obsessive love building products? Like develop, deep self-awareness. So some kind of introspection, reflection and meditation. Third is, I would say, take advantage of skill building. And we have access to so many resources through all kind of, online education platforms. Every possible kind of course is available, right? There's so many entrepreneurship related courses available. So until you start, prepare yourself. Don't just wait on the sidelines or think or fantasize about random ideas. So be systematic and methodical about it. If you really believe, and I genuinely believe, that India entrepreneurship opportunity is not going anywhere for next 25 years. So whether you start today, tomorrow, after 2 years, doesn't matter. But use this time to prepare well so that you give yourself the best possible shot.
Amazing. Okay, this has been an eye-opening conversation for me. Made me think about a lot of things, but most of all, I had so much fun kind of, hearing about your experiences. Thank you so much for so generously sharing. And I'm hoping that this is, like you said, part 1 of our interactions, part 2 about the Tata Group, and part 3 hopefully about what you're planning to do next. We couldn't cover your books, but we will kind of put them on the video for our viewers to see. But there is I think this was a good starting conversation, but I think there's a lot more for us to uncover. But thank you so much for today, and really appreciate your presence here.
Sure, Shantanu. I really enjoyed being on this podcast, and had tremendous fun talking to you. I think I learned more from a lot of your insights and examples you brought to the conversation. So once again, thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you.